should have put you down myself. Personally.
You know, I never understood that. Why did you judge me? Why did you judge me?
You killed innocent people.
The means to an end.
You started a massacre.
I caused the revolution.
You betrayed the law!
Law!
Hello, creeps, and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We are your hosts, Jordan and Kumar, that's me.
Barack Thug.
And this week we are talking about Judge Dredd from 1995, and a whole bunch of Judge Dredd comic books.
So many.
I haven't deleted the pause the podcast line from my notes, so we'll do it. It might be the last time, but...
If you know nothing about Judge Dredd, you could, if you felt so inclined, pause the podcast.
You know what? There's a major plot point in this movie, which is a reveal, but in the comic, it's there from the very beginning.
Yeah, exactly. So if you've read Judge Dredd or know anything about him...
That's the only thing. If we end up talking about the long walk in the comics, I might end up having to spoil a major thing in the comics.
Okay.
But even that has been spoiled by the publishers of 2000 AD if you buy any Judge Dredd collection, so maybe, it's a 40-year-old story arc, I think, at this stage.
The Long Walk one, yeah.
Yeah, or 35 years, anyway. Okay, so there you go. By the way...
did we decide to pause the podcast or not?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Make up your mind. I would say don't bother pausing the podcast.
No, don't bother.
We have an order of business. We have two comments about the Atomic Blonde episode.
What?
Yes. One was an email I got from Aiden. Aiden said, who we know from our often commenting on the manga episodes.
Indeed.
Aiden said, the discussion on Atomic Blonde was really good. I haven't read the comic, but my feelings on the movie skew close to Kumar's. Neat moments, but not something I feel compelled to watch again. The disagreements you two had about the success of the adaptation is the kind of discussion I really appreciate from your show. I see both points there, with adaptations balancing faithfulness to tone and intent, or making alterations that fundamentally change what it is for a different medium. Part of why I love the Villeneuve Dune movies for very different reasons from the Herbert novels. Lol. You can ring the bell for the mention.
I will.
Now we're going to have two more bell rings here in the next comment. This is from Mike Shea. Mike Shea is, I know him on Facebook, he maintains a website called ForgottenAwesome.blogspot.com. It's all about Alan Moore's writings that he did for Rob Liefeld for the character of Supreme in Youngblood.
That's very obscure, alright?
It's not only that obscure, it's about most of it's about the unpublished scripts, because he had done outlines for like 6 more issues or 12 more issues or whatever.
Brilliant.
And we have those outlines, but they were never published. So it's focused on, that's why it's called Forgotten Awesome. So you can ring the bell for Alan Moore.
Alan Moore Apocrypha, I'm ringing the bell for that.
And also Mike Shea is the writer of a comic called Miskatonic High, which is about a Lovecraft, like high school students that fight.
Rad.
That fight Lovecraftian.
I'm going to ring the bell for that too.
There you go, 3 in the first 2 minutes. Mike said, I'm listening to you guys talk about both, this was Atomic Blonde and Colder City, this morning, and it's hilarious hearing you guys melt down trying to explain all the plot holes in the comic and then compound that with the utter stupidity of the movie. A lady was looking at me askance on the subway because I was laughing so hard.
Fantastic, that's what we want. We want you humiliated in public listening to our podcast.
Yes. All right, so let's move on to Judge Dredd. Okay, so I did not write down the original Judge Dredd publication date. I think it was
78 or 79.
78. I'm pretty sure it's close to 78. It was serialized in a magazine called 2000 AD, which we've talked about when we talked about Hardware.
We did.
Now, Judge Dredd first appeared in issue 2.
Yes, Prog 2.
It's about 78, and
they call the issues Progs, I believe.
They call them Progs. And
for program, or is it Prog or is it Prog?
I also says Prog, it's short for. Oh, that's right.
Because it's short for program, so it might be Prog. Anyway, citation needed.
Yeah, we always said Prog.
I'm pretty sure it's Prog. It sounds much more spacey.
So the UK scene was like war comics, right? Up until Star Wars comes out, and then suddenly it's like, holy shit, we got to get a science fiction comic out there ASAP. We get 2000 AD. Pretty soon after Star Wars comes out.
Yep.
we get Judge Dredd. So in the UK, Judge Dredd is about as overground as you can get without being an American overground. Like an American mainstream comic. This is the most mainstream you can get.
Yes. Judge Dredd is an absolute staple of UK comics.
Exactly.
Everyone in the UK knows Judge Dredd.
Exactly.
He's as mainstream as Captain America or Spider-Man or something like that.
Exactly right. It was created by a man named John Wagner, who was actually American, moved to Scotland when he was like 12 or 13, 14, something like that.
Right.
I think that's important. We got to keep that in mind as I create this narrative about the creation of Judge Dredd.
Very good.
Drawn by this fellow, initially Carlos Ezquerra, who he kind of left a little bit early, and Wagner left, and some other writers came on, like Alan Grant, Pat Mills. We got some other artists like
Carlos Ezquerra is credited for Judge Dredd's look. So Judge Dredd has a very distinctive look.
Yes, and he did come back, and we'll read more of his stuff for next week's episode.
Brilliant. But
I love, for me, Ezquerra is maybe the... I mean, Brian Boland drew a bunch of these, and it's...
I really love Brian Boland.
You fall out of your chair looking at his stuff. It's so beautiful.
He did Cursed Earth, which we read for this. I read Cursed Earth for the first time this week. I've heard about Cursed Earth over and over the years. I've even referenced Cursed Earth in this podcast when we talked about hardware.
Yeah.
It's inspired, like, they based it on Damnation Alley.
Right.
The Roger Zelazny novel, which is one of my favourite novels, really. Certainly one of my favourite Zelazny novels. It's just about riding around in a post-apocalyptic hellscape and just getting into all kinds of mischief.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this comic is so good.
Yeah.
And Brian Boland drew a lot of it. And it looks so fantastic. I just love the way he draws Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd is often missing his forehead when he draws. He is literally all jaw.
He's all jaw. He wears a helmet. We'll talk about all this kind of stuff.
I said, so the Ezquerra design, Judge Dredd is sort of... he looks a little bit like a football player, I guess.
He's very lean and wiry.
Yes.
Very lean and wiry, tight.
Originally, yeah. He's wearing tights, he has shoulder pads, and he has a bucket on his head.
Yeah. Yeah.
But radder than that sounds.
Yeah, and he never takes off his helmet.
Never.
When he does, it's blocked in a way that the audience can see it. Or there is one moment where some... bad guys get to see his face and they're like, it's horrible.
Yeah.
And then the actual face has a censored bar.
Yeah, we never see his face. He's either bandaged, or there's something concealing it, or they even, as you said, put a straight up censored block on it. And even in one, he appears with a helmet with a holographic face on top. Right. And incidentally, to open a tab, the holographic face he wears in that particular issue, Prog, is Rondo Hatton's face. The Creeper.
Right. Yes.
Who we mentioned in the Rocketeer episode.
I was going to say something about that. Oh, yeah. There is a storyline where you do get to see his face, but the fact that I've said that now has spoiled that storyline. As soon as you come to this...
The Long Walk.
Storyline where you're seeing this new character is introduced who's amnesiac, and you see his face, now you know who it is. Sorry.
You can cut that if you feel... Yeah.
Okay, so the thing I want to mention is John Wagner wrote under a bunch of pseudonyms as well. So like T.B. Grover and all these other names.
It's great.
And I think they were either trying to make the office look bigger than it really was, or trying to satisfy the corporate heads to make them, to not give the impression that all their eggs are in one basket, John Wagner's basket.
Yes.
Right? Because he was the mastermind of all this stuff. And in fact, a very young Alan Moore submitted a Judge Dredd story, I guess thinking that multiple people wrote Judge Dredd stories, and they were like, no, thank you.
No,
we have John Wagner.
I didn't know that has it ever seen the light of day?
It's out there. You can find the pages and the script, but it was never like completed or published in 2008.
Even now,
he ended up doing like all the Future Shocks and that kind of stuff, but he never did any Judge Dredd because it was mostly Wagner's brainchild, as I said, but
lots
other
of
writers
people have written for Judge Dredd
absolutely
since then.
and especially since Wagner has slowed down in the writing.
I'm surprised that they've never just published the lost Alan Moore Judge Dredd story.
I would say that the relationship is sour enough between 2000 AD and Alan Moore that...
Say it ain't so. Alan Moore not getting along with somebody.
No. Yeah. But I don't... That's one relationship I don't know what the beef is specifically in that case.
Okay.
Whereas I can name what it is with... Marvel or DC.
Yeah, it's all various other things.
Okay, so, and these are all, the 2000 was an anthology series, so you get like 4 stories in there. They're all about 6 pages each. So these Judge Dredd stories are about 6 to 8 pages.
Yeah.
Always, if it's a long-running serial, you have a cliffhanger at the end of every 8th page. Pow, pow, pow. Like that. It kind of reminds me of EC Comics in the sense you've got this anthology with just the best artists in there. You get like 4 great stories in this little pamphlet. Printed incredibly cheaply on the worst disposable newsprint. Wasn't supposed to survive a week. We might talk about that a little bit more next week.
Okay.
Okay, so Judge Dredd.
Describe the character of Judge Dredd.
Right. Okay, so you have a story that's set in the future around the year 2100.
Yes.
It's in a giant city. It's what's called
Mega City
1, which is the entire eastern seaboard of the U.S. from, like, New York down to Miami, something like that.
Importantly, yes.
And there's another megacity on the west coast, and there's also Megacity 3, which is just like Texas. I don't even think they call it
They call it Texas City.
Texas City, right.
Yeah.
And there's also
Megacity 2 covers the entire western seaboard, all the way from Seattle down to, like Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It's the reverse on the other side of the continent. In the middle is a realm called the Cursed Earth.
Yes. Which has been blown... There's been a nuclear war.
Yep.
40 years earlier, there was a nuclear war, and the president that pushed this button was, like, ostracized. We'll get more into this a little bit. But basically, the people elected these judges. They brought in a new system.
Well, maybe not with the consent of the people, but what happened? Society collapsed.
Yes.
And there was anarchy.
Yeah.
Roving gangs.
Yeah.
Anyway, at some point, order was re-established somehow.
Yeah.
With a new system where individuals would have the sole kind of like disciplinary and legislative power of the state.
Yes.
They
Judge, jury, execution.
Not just that, but legislator as well.
Yes, exactly.
So the judges just do everything. We seldomly see them legislating, but we certainly see them doing the job of the courts.
Yes.
That is, the cops and the courts. So they roam around on the streets.
Yeah.
They see someone committing a crime. They arrest them, pass sentence, judge them, and then execute them.
Yes. Well, it's up to them.
Carry out the sentence.
They can say 20 years in prison, and the very first Judge Dredd story, he imprisons them to like a traffic island.
It's amazing.
Later on, we hear that they're executing jaywalkers, if they so choose.
Yeah.
Now, as soon as you hear the words judge, jury, and executioner, you think, aha, fascist. This is a fascist state, fascist system. And I was only really got into these Judge Dredd stories about 3 years ago. And I was always under the impression that, this is going to be like Batman, right? Where the creators of Batman have created this rich man who goes around beating up poor people, sending them to the hospital, and they don't know what they've created. This rich white dude that's going around.
And
I thought, Judge Dredd's going to be saying, no, this is very British. This is very un-American.
The difference between American
John Wagner knows, and there's a certain point where he saw the kids on the playgrounds playing Judge Dredd, and he was like, this is not a good thing.
Yes.
And he definitely switched gears at some stage, which we'll talk about all that stuff.
Yes, this is we talked a bit about it in Hardware.
Yeah.
But the big difference between kind of American and British comics, as epitomized by 2000 AD and Judge Dredd, is that Judge Dredd is very satirical.
That too, yes.
And very kind of like ironic.
Yep.
Dredd is not earnest. He's not a solution to our problems.
That's right. That's right.
He's a figure almost of ridicule.
Yes, within the strip. I mean, even other characters are like talking about how he doesn't like music. Or they bring in this giant war rig in the Cursed Earth storyline. They're like, look at this amazing thing. Judge Dredd's like,
why isn't it bigger?
Yes. And the thought balloon from this guy is, Judge Dredd feels nothing.
Yeah, he's not even impressed. He's not impressed by anything.
He's not even a one-dimensional character. He's a half-dimensional character. He follows the word of the law.
Yeah.
I had a discussion about this on Deconstructing Comics, but there's an early storyline where there's this robot revolution. And Judge Dredd puts it down.
That's the first arc, yeah.
And he's like, okay, go back to being slaves. That's the word they use, slaves.
Yep.
Then in the Cursed Earth storyline, which is maybe a year or two later, he finds these aliens are being enslaved. And he's like, it's wrong to enslave these aliens.
He even says, no matter who's being enslaved, robots, humans, aliens.
Yeah. So what's
The
going
law
on
says-
here? He follows the letter of the law. So it's the law
The law's
says
changed.
robots can be enslaved.
But he mentions robots in his.
Does he?
He
That's
does.
even
He
crazier.
does. It's crazy. Well, look, it's not consistent, but you're right. He follows the letter of the law. Presumably, the law means something different by this point. Maybe they've changed the law.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah.
But yes, he's such an absolutist, but he's not a moral absolutist. He's a legal absolutist.
Yes.
And because the judges, it's a bit like paranoia, right? Because the judges change the law constantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dredd can be anything.
Yes. So actually, this is the kind of where I was going. We don't know anything about him. As I said, we don't know what kind of music he likes. You know, when you're writing something, they often say when you're writing a piece of fiction, your first step with your characters is, okay, figure out what kind of music they like, who are their parents, where did they grow up.
No,
you get nothing of this in Judge Dredd.
It's the point,
at least in the beginning. And you maybe, we learn his name is Joe. Pretty early on, we learn he's a clone of the first judge, one of the very first chief judges.
Judge Fargo.
And he has two clone brothers. One is Rico, who turns up early, who became a criminal.
Yes.
And sneaks back into Mega City 1 and then has a shootout with Judge Dredd. They actually have a draw.
Comic, The Return of Rico.
Yeah, The Return of Rico. And he has to shoot him.
And then he carries him to the morgue.
Yeah.
He ain't heavy. He's my brother.
That's right. We don't really know anything about his background. He's a blank slate, and you could very easily see why the readers would be like project themselves onto Judge Dredd.
Yeah,
because we don't know anything. We don't even know his face.
No, we never see his face. It's important, and his backstory is that he's a clone of somebody else.
Yeah. That's right.
And
clone to uphold the law.
Yeah.
Right? Because we know you need 15 years in the academy.
Well, people that become judges are put in the academy, I think, when they're like 5 years old.
Yes.
And then they're subjected to some kind of brutal training regimen.
Yes.
In fact, in one of the stories we read, the Democracy arc, Dredd threatens a citizen by threatening to draft his kids into the judges by saying, "You're such a model citizen, your kids will make great judge material." Yeah. And then the guy buckles and does what Dredd tells him.
He was blackmailing the guy to try to get him to rescind his wife's statements about pro-democracy.
Because democracy, as you said, fascist overtones.
Not even overtones by that stage. It's like, we are fascists.
Yes.
Democracy is
the enemy.
We tried it failed.
Yep.
We're going to uphold the law, whatever it takes, including blackmailing people.
Dredd, John Wagner said, he's gone on the record as saying that Dirty Harry was a big inspiration for Judge Dredd.
Right.
So you can imagine, like, everyone's seen that movie with Andy Robinson.
Yes.
As the Scorpio Killer, or whatever his title is. But that's a great film. But, Judge Dredd's kind of like a Dirty Harry kind of figure, but without an identity, without the Dirty Harry individualism. Just a kind of faceless...
Yes. A robot.
Epitomization of this philosophy.
Sometimes they describe him as a machine or as a robot.
Yeah.
The other thing that's very different from US Comics is he ages in almost real time. So if you pick up a Judge Dredd comic today, he's in his 60s or 70s.
Yes.
He's a very old dude, so he's been aging. And when you buy these collections of Judge Dredd complete collections, they're labeled by years, like year 2100, 2101.
Yeah, it's gross.
Like that. But the other interesting point about the year is that there are people in living memory who remember democracy and remember life before the nuclear wars.
That's true. So it's not the distant future.
No.
In fact, the president that ordered the nuclear holocaust is still alive.
Yes. Preserved, yes.
In an amazing story.
Yes.
In Cursed Earth.
Yes.
We'll talk about that eventually. But so if we haven't painted a sufficient picture of what Judge Dredd is like yet, he's kind of like the Terminator.
Yeah.
He's an utterly implacable man. He has no empathy, no emotions, no remorse. He will absolutely execute you for jaywalking. He has an iron will. He's so iron-willed he punches the Grim Reaper in the face in one comic.
Yeah.
In an absolutely
very famous panel.
Absolutely iconic panel. Gaze into the fist of Dredd.
Yes.
And yet looks ridiculous because he's kind of purple with a bucket on his head.
Yes.
in case it's not clear, I love Judge Dredd.
I love these comics so much.
I love Judge Dredd.
Yeah, I absolutely love them. I love both modes, because you come in, you think you're getting adventure comics, and sometimes you do get that, but then you switch modes to these very grim, depressing anti-democracy stories, which really show you what's going on with this guy you've been applauding.
Yes.
And they reveal, I mean, here's a key thing, here's my take on it. Judge Dredd is the villain. And I think Wagner would agree that Judge Dredd is the villain. And he does, after all that democracy stuff, has kind of a crisis of conscience, but it's partly his crisis of conscience is,
good villains,
why am I feeling pro-democracy?
Good villains have crisis of conscience. Good villains are the heroes of their own stories.
Yes.
So they have crises of conscience.
Yeah.
You're right. Wagner would agree. He's been on the record as saying there are only two ways to look at Judge Dredd. Either in dismay...
Yeah. Yes.
or with wicked delight.
Yes, right.
There are no other possible ways of looking at him.
Right, yeah. So...
I could read... I got a quote from him.
Read that.
Dredd is extreme. Wishy-washy characters do not go down well, but someone who is extremely bad or good is automatically more interesting. Dredd scores twice, because he is both extremely bad...
Yeah.
and possibly good. The stern upholder of the law, never wavering from his code, and yet making judgments that are, by today's standards, terrifying.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to the aging, we get a kind of continuity. Yeah. So, for example, there's an early storyline about this judge called Judge Caligula. Yeah. Sometimes Wagner writes on the nose. It's fine, I love it. Right on the nose. He's usually
called Judge Cal. Is he actually called Judge Caligula?
At the chapter before, it says next issue, Judge Caligula. They never call him Caligula in the issues. When in the stories, they always call him Judge Cal, but they did call him Caligula in the next time in Judge Dredd.
He even looks like Caligula.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go out on a limb here and say he might even have been based on John Hurt's portrayal of Caligula in I, Claudius.
Okay.
Because he has curls and a kind of...
Yeah.
And a kind of pouting face. He does look like a Roman bust, yes.
So he decides to build a wall around the city as one of these crazy things that he's doing. And you think, okay, that's it. At the end of the storyline, we're never going to mention it again. Actually, that wall is still there in later story arcs.
Yep.
It remains. So all this stuff, it accrues. All these details just build up over the years into this big, massive thing.
So it's not in what we call floating time of American superhero comics.
Yeah.
This is very much, we've got continuity.
Yeah.
A bit like the Valiant universe. There's a flashback.
I would also say so we've got the lean physique and the continuity and the aging and him being a villain. Another thing is there's no fetishization of the hardware of his gun and motorbike, I don't think. He's got this kind of fancy sci-fi motorbike, the Lawmaker. No, the gun is the Lawgiver. Lawmaster is the bike.
Yes, that's it.
And it can do some remote control stuff, but it's never like this story's going to be about the bike. There's
in a Batman sense.
In a Batmobile, Batarang kind of thing, like here come the awesome gadgets. It's just stuff that's just kind of there that he uses
not the thing.
To his advantage.
That's not the kind of comic it is.
Exactly.
It tends to be kind of craziness.
Yeah.
Especially Cursed Earth. Well, I read a book, The Making of Judge Dredd, as prep for this episode, that you provided to me, that was published in 1994 or 1995 as a promo tie-in to the film, because the film wasn't out when it was published.
Yeah.
Anyway, to give a sense of the tone, they quoted Kevin Walker, who was the only artist from 2000 AD that was actually hired to work on the Judge Dredd movie. He'd done work on the comics. And he mentioned that he was the only artist hired to work on pre-production.
Okay.
I think some other artists maybe worked on production and post. Anyway, he said that the first Dredd story he ever worked on for 2000 AD didn't even feature Judge Dredd in it.
Right.
It was about a pet rat of someone Dredd had killed that took vengeance for his slain master by taking a dump on the seat of Dredd's lawmaster.
Wow.
That's the kind of story that appears.
Yes.
That's the kind of craziness.
Yes. Yeah.
So, can you imagine a Batman story about Mr. Freeze's rat taking a shit in the Batmobile? It just would never happen.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of thing that happens all the time.
It is really biting, satirical. There's a lot of parody stuff, which we'll talk about in it.
Let's talk about... we should talk about Cursed Earth.
Yes,
right?
okay. We'll talk about Cursed Earth. I think we've covered mostly what Judge Dredd is. So the Curse of Earth storyline, it's a very easy setup. Mega City 2 has some sort of virus which is spreading, which is driving people crazy.
The Tutti Frutti virus.
The Tutti Frutti virus is driving people crazy. They need the vaccine, which is in Mega City 1.
Yes.
For some reason, the airports are shut down, maybe in Mega City 2, so they can't fly there.
It's straight up. You can't fly at all between the cities,
right?
I think.
So they need to get this big land vehicle and drive across. Great setup for having all these just episodic chapters.
Straight out of Damnation Alley.
Right.
It's literally a vaccine in Damnation Alley as well.
Oh, right.
And they get Hell Tanner, the last Hell's Angel, to drive the car.
Yeah.
And we have a punk biker in Cursed Earth. His name, Spike's Rotten?
Right, yes. Yeah.
Great character. He finds some old hand grenades in a bunker and hangs them on his ears.
Yeah. Yeah.
As like earrings. Yeah. He says, how punk rock is this?
Yeah. Yeah.
So good. So he has to... They need someone to get the vaccine from Mega City 1 to Mega City 2. But you can't fly in the air because there's a sort of like a big storm in the jet stream.
Right.
Rocks.
Which is rocks with rats living on them.
Yeah.
That sometimes come down to Earth and feast on people.
So wild. But again, that's in Damnation Alley.
Yes.
Except it's bats, not rats.
Okay. Okay.
But wild.
Yeah.
Rats live in this swirling belt of debris that's in the kind of like just sort of in the jet stream, like just sort of like above, like a couple of 100 meters above the ground level, above sea level. It's amazing. So Dredd just kind of... So Dredd's never left Mega City 1. He's like a beat cop.
Yeah.
He goes around shooting people for jaywalking, but now he's he's in this tank which can it's sort of like a transform or like a Voltron kind of thing. There are two cars that can...
More like the Enterprise, I'd say.
Yeah, the saucer
section separation.
Brilliant.
A bit like that.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yep. And him, a couple of judges, some robot soldiers, Spike's Rotten, the biker, who he's recruited just like Hell Tanner from Damnation Alley because he's the best biker and he's going to get his freedom if he joins up.
Right.
It's so great. It's so cliche, but it's so great. And essentially they just... And the Cursed Earth can have anything. Anything. Because it's a radioactive wasteland. Anything you can imagine.
Well, I would say the Judge Child storyline, which takes place in space, has even more anything can happen. Even way more. There's this planet where they get this jigsaw disease where sections of people are disappearing.
Yeah.
In like exact, like perfectly carved out sections.
I remember that.
By the way, there's a storyline in there where they're trying to find this psychic child. In order to find them, Judge Dredd has to get something called the Oracle Spice, which allows him to foresee where this child is, and if you have even one drop of it, it will kill you. Yeah. But at the same time, in the Cursed Earth, we get the storyline about this dinosaur national park where they have cloned dinosaurs from DNA extracted from fossils and formed a theme park.
They put them in alligator eggs.
Yes.
Yep. And they hatched them in this... and turned it into a theme park to pay for national parks, so tourists will come and see the dinosaurs that have been recovered with genetic engineering from fossils, hatched from alligator eggs, the eggs of another species.
Yeah, but now they've gone berserk, because after the nuclear war they've all been set free.
This story was written by Pat Mills, and I don't know about you, Kumar, but I think he's got a Harlan Ellison level case here.
Yeah, well, this was like
Michael
1980, and Crichton's novel came out in 90.
That's correct. I looked it up.
Westworld was mid-70s, but still, I mean, dinosaurs aren't Western robots.
It's all there.
It's all there. It was
they
really
get the DNA out of
shocking.
fossils.
Yeah.
They incubate them. It's frogs in Jurassic Park. It's alligator eggs in this story. It's called Dinosaur National Park.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I read this, I was like...
Yeah.
And I messaged you straight away.
Yes.
And you said I had the same reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I couldn't believe it. And then it turns out it's a tie-in to another 2008 AD story called Flesh.
Yeah, that Satanus character was some kind of dinosaur that they were breeding or going back in time to. They needed meat to eat.
Yeah, it's a story called Flesh.
Yeah.
And they go back and hunt dinosaurs for meat, and the dinosaurs go mad and kill them.
Right. There's a little bit of continuity between
Satanus,
there's ABC Warriors, like these robots. There's a few crossover series, but not much. Like, they weren't trying to make Judge Dredd crossover with Slanye or Turkmata or Nemesis. Like, it wasn't
Nemesis
like that.
The Warlock.
Yeah, it was like, mostly he was in his own world.
Yes, that's true.
My favorite section of The Cursed Earth was the Burger Wars.
Of course.
Which was not reprinted until 2016.
I thought it was 2014.
Okay,
it doesn't
2014.
matter.
I think maybe
about 10 years ago.
Maybe the laws changed. I'm not
They
sure.
did. There was a specific law. You might remember it. It was about... It happened because of a restaurant chain that was calling their restaurant something like McDonald's, named after McDonald's burgers, and there was a big court case in Europe. And now everywhere in Europe, there's a free use rule.
Oh, right.
About, big corporate kind of trademarks.
Right.
And so this story wasn't reprinted for 30 years.
Yeah.
But so as of 10 years ago, you can now get the Burger Wars story.
Right.
It's fantastic.
Yes.
It's so funny.
Yes. Funny and weird. Bizarre.
Dredd and his cohort stumble into a firefight that's going on between two armies, one of which is led by a man in clown makeup, another which is led by...
The Burger King. They don't even call him anything else. He's just called the
It's
Burger
obvious
King.
from the start. Burger King and Ronald McDonald. And the armies are yelling trademarks.
Yes.
Like, the Burger King guys are like, the burgers are better!
Yes.
And the McDonald's guys are yelling the relevant trademarks from the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
Freshness guaranteed and all kinds of other things. Yeah. It's so hilarious.
Yeah. And they're trying to recruit, they're trying to force...
We need more consumers.
To join one side or the other.
Yeah, so I think maybe Dredd's team themselves killed the Burger King.
Yes.
And Ronald McDonald says, well, it doesn't matter because they'll just appoint a new one. There always has to be a Burger King.
Yeah.
And he goes, but you guys are coming with us. You're our slaves now. Well, he doesn't say slaves. I think he says consumers or customers.
Right.
We always need more customers.
Yeah.
Fresh customers to serve McDonald's to. And then they get back to like McDonald's City.
Yeah.
And the only thing you're allowed to eat is McDonald's. Yeah. Everyone's wearing kind of like paper hats, which they don't wear at McDonald's anymore, but they used to in the 70s presumably. And they just like Tourette's out these slogans all the time.
Yeah.
It's a bit like Idiocracy.
Yes, it is like that.
But even more nihilistic and crazy.
Because it's comic, you can just have these massive battles where hundreds of people are dying on every page. This is part of what I was meant to come back to about the disposable paper. So I'm thinking, why did they think they could get away with this? I think they thought the paper would not last a week.
Right.
It would disintegrate and nobody would think about it again. But at the same time, they knew how disposable this medium they were working, and yet they never held back. All of these guys, Wagner, Mills, they never held back. The artists were like, I'm going to draw the hell out of this battle.
Oh, it's very violent.
And it's going to be reprinted on this shitty paper. Doesn't matter. They poured it all onto these crappy newsprint pages.
Yeah.
It's really astonishing, the level of craftsmanship that's going on here, the dedication to making the ideas bigger and bigger. Then they get to Las Vegas. It's completely run by mafia. We haven't mentioned, one of the things John Wagner likes is ethnic stereotype accents, like his Italian maid, Judge Dredd's maid.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of Spanish judge that's based on Ezquerra. Even looks like him, and he might be in the next week's comics, but so Las Vegas is being run by these mafia
judges.
Mafia judges, that's right. Yeah.
And there are games, or everything's about gambling.
Yes, that's right.
So the society's based around gambling.
Yeah.
And Judge Dredd manages to out-gamble them, and he gets appointed the new chief judge, and he resets everything and brings Mega City 1's fascism to Las Vegas. Nuts. Yeah. And then they go to... There's the story that we hinted at earlier with the president of the US.
Oh, yes, with the robot vampires.
Robot vampires.
Yeah.
We've got robot vampires whose teeth are hypodermic syringes.
Yes.
They go around looking for a certain blood type.
Yeah.
Which they need for some reason. Like all the robots in Judge Dredd, they kind of prissy and talk in euphemisms, and it's hilarious. It turns out they're seeking blood from the surrounding farms in order to give blood transfusions to the President of the United States, who is imprisoned in Fort Knox.
In suspended animation. That's his punishment for the crime of, first of all, of the nuclear war, which led to the current post-apocalyptic world, and also for waging a terrible robot war against the survivors. They find him, he wakes up in the course of this story and sort of like begs Judge Dredd, 40 years is enough, please. And Judge is like, the sentence is,
life. Back in he goes. Back into suspended animation he goes. It's so great. Then I think the penultimate comic, they stumble on an ancient battlefield. Well, it's not that ancient, it's only 40 years. It's the battlefield of the final war between the judges and the robots that were loyal to this president. And the robots are all garbage, but they all wake up and start attacking. They're programmed to attack judges. So they start going nuts, attacking Judge Dredd. Everyone's killed, including, Spike's rotten.
Yes, that's right.
And all of Dredd's fellow kind of like judges, they're all killed. His robot soldiers are all killed. His tank is blown up. His car's blown up. It's just Dredd. And he, in a very Judge Dredd moment, he kind of just walks to Mega City 2.
Yes.
The remaining...
Insists on walking. The remaining, last final steps.
Weeks travel. He just walks, not eating, not drinking.
Yeah. And he sees kind of like the apparitions of all the people he's met in the Cursed Earth. In the past 12 chapters or whatever.
Drawn brilliantly by Brian Bolland. And then he arrives there bringing with him some crap from the Cursed Earth, which then forms the story for Shock, which we covered about 100 episodes ago.
Yes, that's right.
That robot that goes crazy in that apartment is something that Dredd carried with him from the Cursed Earth.
Right. Okay, should we talk... So the other story I thought we should read for this week was the... Democracy/America stories. Now, the reason I chose these was because they were published around 88 to 90. So about 10 years after the introduction of Judge Dredd, John Wagner was like, well, let's take another look at this. And this material was available for anyone making a Judge Dredd movie. I just want that to be clear.
Good.
That's why I chose
All right, sum it up.
These stories were shocking to me. Really shocking.
It's hard to enjoy these because Dredd is just plain evil.
And it's not even just Dredd, right? It's the people. Because the people, anytime important, there's a pro-democracy movement that's kind of happening. Anytime it's on the news, people are like, change the channel. We get panels of people in our homes, and they're saying this same crap again, change the channel. This thing that comes up again and again. Their pro-democracy movement is going to have a big march. First they take over a TV station. They don't hurt anybody, and they're like, they take over the airwaves. They're like, look, we think democracy needs to come back. The judges have too much power. They can shoot people in the street for whatever reason they choose.
They make the law. They dispense the law.
Right. And
they enforce the law.
The judges show up, led by Judge Dredd, at the TV station. They're like, go in there, let's shoot them dead. And they shoot them dead. They didn't hurt anybody. And you're like, holy shit, okay. Then, this is when we get to that bit where Judge Dredd... So now this big democracy march is going to happen with like 20 million people. And Judge is like, well, we can't... The Chief Judge is like, well, we can't stop the march because then people will riot. But we need to make people lose confidence in the march. So
nothing could be worse than people being interested in or sympathetic to democracy. This is the worst thing that could happen. We have to stop this march in some way, shape or form. But we have to do it within the law. And Judge Dredd is not a reluctant participant in this. He's in absolute agreement with these chief judges. They're like, well, we're going to arrest one of the elderly leaders of the march on a trumped up charge, and we're going to make him stand up the night before.
Torture him. Send him back into the parade.
So that he collapses during the march and people will be disillusioned thereby. We've got the husband of one of the martyrs from the TV station takeover. He's become pro-democracy in the interim, where Judge Dredd himself is going to go to his house, tell him that he has to recant.
And also recant what his wife said.
You got to recant what your wife said.
If you don't do that, we're going to roll your 2 kids into the judge program.
He says, I haven't committed any crimes. He goes, no, you haven't committed any crimes. In fact, you're a model citizen. You're such a model citizen that your kids are judge material. And this is a system where you're enrolled at 5 and you're treated with utter brutality for 15 years until you're a brainwashed kind of cyborg. And the father obviously reacts with horror. And goes on television and recants. Says, my wife was wrong, I was wrong, democracy's bad, don't go ahead with the march. They do this to everyone.
They got one guy that they have a picture of him from his college days where he's dressed as a Soviet. So they go up to him and they're like, you're a commie. And then they plant 2 judges in disguise in this mob to accuse him of being a communist.
They have no problem with agence provocateur. Like they put judges in the march to throw rocks at judges.
Yeah.
So to justify the judges beating the shit out of them.
Yeah.
And then when the judges come in to beat the shit out of them, these judges have code words. These undercover judges have code words. So they don't get daddy or something.
I'm a daddy or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So that they don't get the shit beat out of them along with everyone else. The whole thing is just so awful.
Awful and depressing. By the way, this does have consequences in a following storyline because this kid had a friend. There's a kid who writes a letter to Judge Dredd. It's called A Letter to Judge Dredd, this story. And his friend's father had been clubbed on the head during the march. He hadn't done anything wrong, but he'd been clubbed on the head. And he had brain damage. And now was paranoid about his wife and son. And that brain damaged man ends up killing the kid that was writing the letter. Dredd gets a letter which is about like, explain, I'm writing a paper about the judge system, can you explain, I'm sure you did this and this for good reasons. This is when he has a crisis of conscience and goes on the long walk. We still have to talk about that a little bit. But so there are kind of consequences, but during this storyline, now this is followed by another storyline where they're actually going to have a referendum. This movement is building up enough steam, and Judge Dredd somehow is in the one that had the yes or no vote on whether they have this referendum.
It seems like it's Dredd's idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it was his idea, it's even more chilling, because we know what the outcome is.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, much like the wall going around Mega City 1, it kind of stings.
It stings very much in the present day.
It really stings.
Because of course they vote.
They have this election. We get more panels of people home saying change the channel. People who don't know how to vote. How do you vote? You can't figure out that.
They're watching an infomercial telling them how to vote, and they try to vote right then.
Yeah.
But the election's in like 2 weeks. It's kind of like people you've been tiptoeing around it, but it's kind of like people on election day googling, did Joe Biden step out of the race?
Oh, and also, what is Brexit? Remember that one?
Yes.
That was like number one.
What is Brexit?
Search.
Yeah, the day after. The day after.
Yeah.
Yeah. It hurts, man.
So they had. I think the stats we're given are 35% voter turnout, the lowest in 75 years. This is for a referendum on democracy, and remember, people in living memory remember democracy and life before the judges. 33%. It was
only like 50 years earlier, eh?
And then, like 83% of those people who did vote to keep the judges in place, and 9% vote against.
Yeah.
It is chilling. It is horrific.
Yeah.
And you kind of think, well, this is a science fictional setting when you're reading it the first time. And you're like, these are extreme numbers. These are Cursed Earth type numbers. You know what I mean? It's like way in the future. It's all this kind of... You're a mega city with 600 million people.
The authors like Wagner and people like that have said, this shows that democracy doesn't work in the Judge Dredd universe.
Yeah.
But what's the difference?
Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at with Judge Dredd and who that guy is.
So yeah, if you were feeling kind of cool about Judge Dredd from the Cursed Earth storyline,
you actually feel sick to your stomach.
Dismay, as Wagner put it.
Yeah. Okay, so shall we move on to the movie? Is there anything else you want to mention? Okay. So we get this movie in 1995, directed by Danny Cannon.
Yes.
Who is the mastermind, I guess, showrunner behind Gotham and Gotham Knights and Pennyworth.
That's it. He's had a bit of a proper comeback in the last 10 years. Yeah.
Written by William Wisher,
written by many people, but Wisher is credited.
Terminator movies.
Yeah.
Stephen E. D'Souza, who's a famous writer, wrote 48 Hours, but also The Running Man, Commando, Hudson Hawk, The Spirit, the TV movie of The Spirit, which you might be covering.
Wow.
And also wrote on the Cadillacs and Dinosaurs cartoon, which you won't be covering. But
amazing.
Starring Sylvester Stallone. Now, I remember very clearly hearing the news that Stallone was going to be playing Judge Dredd.
Right.
And immediately you think, okay, he's got the right jaw for it. Right? Judge Dredd always has a scowl, this grimace.
He scowls and he has the lantern jaw.
Yes. And you're like, okay, but in the very same instant you're having that thought, the other thought is, well, he's not going to leave the helmet on. The helmet's going to come off. It's Sylvester Stallone. And then I remember seeing trailers, and sure enough...
The helmet's off.
I don't remember even barely seeing the helmet in the trailers, as I recall. So that was a bummer. Okay, but the movie starts, and we get comics covers and pages.
Always good to
pages.
see. Not just covers, but panels.
Yep. And the logo, the actual Judge Dredd logo.
The logo.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah. I was surprised by that. They were like, look at this.
Well, we're always happy to see comics art in the credits.
But I would also add that at this stage in the US, I think very few people knew about Judge Dredd.
That's true.
So you got to project to them, this is actually a thing that people care about and has been around for a long time. Look at all these covers. Look at all these comics. This is a thing which people know about.
That's right, yeah. I mean, this was a big deal in the UK.
Yeah.
Yet, no one in the US had heard of it. So, this is how you say, this is a thing.
Yeah.
Be reassured.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Which I suppose is why they put comic art in credits.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah.
In all the examples we've covered, we always throw...
We have a foundation.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Everything's okay. Then we get another foundation. We get the voice of James Earl Jones, for some reason, giving us
this
a voiceover.
This is his only appearance in the film.
Yes. The opening narration. Usually a bad sign, especially any science fiction movie where you get an opening scroll.
Yeah.
It's often not good.
Yeah.
I would say even Star Wars, you'd say, what about Star Wars? What about Episode 1?
Star Wars is it. Yeah, well, they were deliberately aping a style of movie serials.
Exactly, yes.
But if you need it for people to come to grips with, if you have lack of confidence in your setting, and you need people to come to grips with your setting with an opening crawl, this is a problem. And if you need James Earl Jones to do it, it's like, this is science fiction. Remember that other show?
Yes.
That you liked?
Yeah.
You're going to like this. James Earl Jones isn't in this movie.
Yeah.
He has no role.
Yep. He did 5 minutes in the recording studio for this bit.
Yep. I have no idea what he was paid, but I'm sure it was a lot of money.
Also, from the opening scroll, we're told it's the third millennium. So this is the year 3000, not the year 2100.
No, Kumar, the third millennium. We're currently in the third millennium.
Oh.
Sorry. In 1995, the third millennium was 5 years away.
The third millennium. Oh,
I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. No, we'll leave it my stupid... I'm not going to edit that out. I've said dumber things on this show. Okay. So we get open on this kind of desert sequence, and these prisoners who are being released, or who have served their terms, are coming back to Mega City 1.
Yes.
Now, we meet our prisoner, Rob Schneider. Okay, and then he's your
everyman here.
He's the comedy sidekick, much like, say, Tom Arnold in True Lies. There's always one of these goofballs.
Yes. Later on, yes. That, and it's unfortunate. I don't think it's a good match for Dredd. I mean, there are silly characters, especially the robots, who are always talking kind of colloquial, like with silly accents but at this point, he's just your everyman. I think he's our entry point to the world of Mega City 1.
Yes, but why? Because we get a 5-minute scene, opening credits, where he's flying into this amazing future city. Looks like you imagine Mega City 1.
Yep.
The effect's not bad for 1995, I thought.
Not bad at all.
Looked pretty good. We get this Alan Silvestri music, which is bombastic and annoying the whole way through the movie. We had to deal with him a few weeks ago. Look, he wrote some great scores, Back to the Future. It's a memorable theme. Here it's just non-stop, amazing. Look at this amazing city.
Batman.
Mega City 1 is not supposed to be amazing. It's supposed to be a grungy shithole that needs to be governed by these judges. It's not supposed to be like, wow, look at Coruscant.
That's right. You're completely right.
So it doesn't make any sense that... And also, he's coming back to the city. Why is he in awe of it? He lived here before he went to jail.
Problem.
Why is he like, wow, look at these awesome high buildings?
He thinks he's been told by his processing judge that he's going to go live in Paradise Heavenly Havens. And they fly over like the highest point of the building, and there's a beautiful swimming pool and lovely people frolicking in it.
Yeah.
And he says, that must be Heavenly Haven.
Yeah.
And the other prisoners on the ship go, are you stupid? What, are you kidding?
Yeah.
That's not for the likes of us. And then they go down street level, which is 400, 500 feet below what he thought was going to be Heavenly Haven. Problem, he's lived in Mega City 1. He knows that he's not going to be living up there where the elites
Problem
live.
number 2, why are they giving accommodation to prisoners? Do we provide accommodation to people that are released from prison?
I'm not an expert on that, but I mean, I don't know. But maybe this is a socialist.
Yeah, okay.
Prisoners have to go somewhere.
Yes, okay.
I think you do have to have a place of abode when you leave
but there's something like a halfway houses or something like that. I don't think they set you up in an apartment.
The judges control everything.
Okay.
Including where you live.
Okay.
Out of prison, you're going to live.
I have to say, these judges are actually a little bit empathetic, which we'll talk about. It's part of it's a plot point.
Yeah, it is.
But I also want to point out in the opening credits, we learned that Judge Dredd's armor costume was designed by Gianni Versace.
Yes, that's interesting.
It's in the credits. There's a woman who designed the costumes. I've forgotten her name.
I've forgotten her name too. She designed the costumes, right?
Yeah.
Versace did not design the costumes.
He designed the armor costume.
Right. I read the making of Judge Dredd, as I said. Versace is not mentioned in this book.
Yeah. Okay.
What is mentioned is the actual costume designer, a woman, and Stallone. Who, Stallone, he's topping from the bottom in this movie. Like, he had a big role.
Right.
Which this book, making of book, tiptoes around. Because they don't want to say that the star was directing the movie.
Oh, okay.
But instead they talk about how great it was that he was so invested in the production.
Okay.
And that he had all these ideas about what the costume had to look like. So apparently they took the costume to his house and he said, it's got to look more like the comic. And he was all about there's a lot of gold.
Yeah.
He was very much about the gold all over the comic, the gold pads on the shins. Yeah. Originally they took the chains off because they wanted it to be a bit more grounded.
Okay.
But he put the chains back on. Mm-hmm. And
why would he do that if he's just going to take his helmet off? It looks like the comic for a minute.
15 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
15. I think I came into this movie, I watched it in the 90s. I remember I didn't particularly like it at the time. And since then, having become kind of like a fan of the comics, I've held it in disdain because of how famously annoyed Judge Dredd comic fans are about certain things.
Yeah.
Judge Dredd takes off his helmet.
Yeah.
Judge Dredd gets emotional about the law.
Yeah.
Judge Dredd kisses someone.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I watched the first 15 minutes and I thought, this is good.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
I like this.
Yep.
Rob Schneider goes back to his flat.
Yeah.
He opens the door, there's squatters in there. They're serious crooks, unlike him, he's just some sort of petty criminal. They're shooting at people in the apartment block over the road. It's a block war.
It's a block war. This is something that happens in the comics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then, some judges arrive, they're taking cover, there's fire flying everywhere.
Yeah.
Then Dredd pulls up on his Lawmaster.
Yeah.
Looks rad.
Yeah.
He gets off. Stallone's in great shape. He's
and
not
you
lean.
get a pan up from the feet up. You get a long shot of his crotch.
Yep. He's wearing a codpiece.
Yep. The codpiece and his chest and the helmet.
And he's wearing his helmet, but it's plainly him. In fact, you can see most of his face.
Yes.
Because the visor is partly translucent, so you can actually see his eyes.
Yeah.
You can see his nose. You can see his chin. You can see the famous drooping lip that Stallone has.
Yeah. The birth defect.
But yes. I think it was caused. I think at forceps birth or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's clearly Stallone.
Yeah.
And a little microphone comes down and he goes,
Yeah. By the way, I would do something we didn't mention with the comics is Judge Dredd is a famous judge in Mega City 1.
Yes.
All the criminals know he is. Everybody knows who he is. They're terrified of him. Even on other planets in the Judge Isle, they're like, oh, Judge Dredd's here. Like, they know who he is.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like that here, so that's fun.
And he's not taking cover. He's just standing there.
He's just standing there.
And there's bullets ricocheting all around him. He doesn't care. He walks up to the two other judges and he says, what are you doing?
Okay.
And they're like, we're taking cover and waiting for backup. And he goes, it's here.
Right, and he seems to know that their bullets don't have the range based on what kind of guns they're using.
It's fine. He says that they're fletchet rounds. They have an effective range of 200 feet. They're 300 feet from the windows.
Yeah.
They're perfectly safe. What are you doing?
What windows? That whole block, 2 blocks are at war with each other.
It's fine, because it's the sort of thing Judge Dredd would do. I'm okay with it, because it's what Judge Dredd would do.
Okay.
He would absolutely not take cover in a block war. He would be standing there yelling at people to throw down their guns.
Okay, yeah.
And surrender to the law.
He would be shooting people, though.
Well, he does. Unfortunately, that's when it's So he grenades open the door of the apartment block.
He has a gun which he speaks to.
The lawgiver. Lawgiver 2. This is straight from the comic. You can talk to it. It's voice activated. You tell it what sort of ammo you want. High X, flare.
Yeah.
full auto. I think at one point he says full auto rapid fire, which feels like a tautology. Will gun experts please write in and let me know if that's a thing? And he like stomps into the building. He takes everybody out. We get a scene where he passes sentence on a guy.
Yeah.
Everyone's already been shot. He reads out the charges.
By the way, he gets into the room by cutting a hole around himself, like in Looney Tunes. He goes on the floor above and shoots a bullet hole around in a circle and then falls through. Yeah.
Fine, it's the sort of thing Dredd would do in the comic. I'm okay with it.
Maybe, okay.
Oh, you absolutely would. And then he's got this guy at gunpoint. He rattles off the charges, squatting.
Yeah.
1 year ISO. Possession of illegal firearm. 5 years ISO. Assault on a, discharging said illegal firearm. 10 years ISO. He's killed a judge. The rookie judge that's there with himself and Hershey, who is the other judge.
Yeah, played by Diane Lane.
Diane Lane, do you want to mention what else she's been in?
She is in all 4 Zack Snyder Superman movies, the Zack Snyder DCU.
I believe she plays Martha!
Who saved the whole DC universe.
She did.
From the death of Superman.
Did you also know that she plays President Jennifer Brown in Why the Last Man TV show?
No, I didn't know that. I didn't notice that in her credits.
No worries. So, anyway. Judge Dredd is rattling off all these charges, and then he mentions that the sentence for assaulting a judge, let alone killing a judge, is death.
Yeah.
To establish that Dredd is the good guy, despite having just passed a sentence of death on this crook, the crook pulls a gun on him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that Dredd has to shoot him in self-defense. And this is about 15 minutes in.
Okay.
And this is the point when I'm like,
Yeah, I'm going to say there's some other stuff going on here, okay? So in the comics, we have these giant these blocks, these apartment towers.
Yep.
Each one has about 70,000 people in it, like science fiction overcrowding, you know what I mean? And they have names of celebrities, like, I don't know, like Estelle Getty Towers or something, that's not one, but they all have these ridiculous names of famous people. In this movie, when Judge Hershey comes up, she says block war. She radios in block war on the corners of Abbott and Costello. Later, she mentions like Burns and Allen, like these comedy duos.
Yeah.
But I don't think this movie knows what it wants to be, because that stuff is hilarious when you read it in the comic. In the movie, you're like, is this
supposed to be funny?
And then he does that Looney Tunes thing. It's not played for laughs. It's played for, like, look how awesome Judge Dredd is.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, you're right. That is a problem. That's a problem with the tone. This film has a serious tone problem. I was watching it with Vannie, my wife, and she said, okay, this film, she said, she's just watching it out of the corner of her eye.
Yeah.
She said, this film can't make up its mind. Is this Flash Gordon?
Yeah.
Or is it Die Hard?
Yes.
This film cannot make up its mind what it is.
Yeah, too many writers might be part of the problem.
If it were one of those two, it would be great.
Yeah, or not understanding the source material. Yeah.
That's part of it as well, because no one... Well, Danny Cannon is apparently a massive Judge Dredd fan.
Okay.
Unfortunately. Massive Judge Dredd fan. In fact, submitted fan art of a Judge Dredd movie poster in the 80s.
Wow.
To 2000 AD, and it was published.
Wow, okay.
And then he ended up directing a Judge Dredd movie.
Wow.
And there's not a lot about this film online, so I can't find out too much about what went behind the scenes. But he was very unhappy with his experience filming this, and in fact swore afterwards that he would never work with a big movie star again.
Okay. Okay.
So read between the lines there. But, otherwise, not many people from 2000 AD didn't work on this film. The only one was, I mentioned earlier, the Kevin Walker, who was an artist, who'd done a few stories.
Yeah.
But, Wagner, Mills, all of these people, they weren't involved.
Right.
They'd sold the rights, they weren't involved.
Right. Okay.
Dredd pulls Rob Schneider out of a robot where he's taking cover.
Yeah, he's hiding in this robot which has a big Coors logo on it. Now, here's another thing, okay? This is product placement. This is not satirizing Coors in the way we have Burger Wars. There's another storyline in Cursed Earth where they meet Colonel Sanders, who is cloning product mascots like the Jolly Green Giant.
Yeah.
It's craziness.
Yeah, that story's nuts.
is really nuts, but this movie doesn't seem to understand any of that.
No.
They're trying to have this funny robot and this funny Rob Schneider covered in spaghetti. It's a food recycling robot.
It's just buddy cop comedy.
Yes.
Rob Schneider is just the goofy sidekick.
Yes.
It is not satire. There is no satire.
Exactly.
This film is a satire-free zone.
No, but they're trying to put in little bits in there like Burns and Allen Boulevard.
Yes.
Or Abbott and Costello Lane or whatever it is.
But they're not getting it. It's not like Flash Gordon where it was so camp it was good.
Yeah.
And yet it has campy stuff like Dredd's out, like an eagle on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Like gold bling.
Yes.
Like, as you said, Abbott and Costello Avenue.
Yeah.
But they haven't lent into that.
Yeah.
It's just there. Why is it there? Is it there because it's just left over from an earlier script?
Exactly. That's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like feels like they should have gone serious, or they should have realized how, lent into this stuff.
Yeah.
Instead of just assuming it's funny because Diane Lane said it out loud.
Yeah, that's it. Or comic fans want to see, or is it just going to be a Leo moment?
Yeah.
There it is, Abbott and Costello.
Yeah. Yes.
I get it.
Yes.
I came to a Judge Dredd movie to see this.
Yes. Okay, so
this scene I like. Dredd passed a sentence on Rob Schneider.
Sends him back to jail.
He said passed a sentence on for sabotaging this robot to take cover inside it, and Rob Schneider can barely believe his ears. I was going to get shot.
Yeah.
If I didn't go in this robot, I would have been killed.
Yeah. By the way, almost every scene Rob Schneider is in starts with him saying, "I'm alive" or "I'm not dead." Almost every scene talks about him being alive or dead or surviving.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, please continue.
Well,
he said back to
this is a great Dredd style moment because clearly there are extenuating circumstances here. Rob Schneider was going to die.
Yeah.
Unless he hid in this robot.
Yeah.
But all Dredd cares about is that he's broken the law.
The letter of the law, yeah.
And he even says, Rob Schneider says, "What was I supposed to do?" And Dredd says, "You could have gone out the window." And Schneider says, "But we're 40 stories up. I'd have died." And Dredd says, "But it would have been legal."
Yes.
5 years.
Yes.
Sentence, I sentenced you to 5 years. That's it.
Yeah.
And Schneider says, "Don't I get an appeal?" Nope.
Yeah.
Off he goes to some other judges rock up. Away he goes. That's it.
Yeah.
Straight out of the comic. I love it.
Yeah.
That's what Dredd does.
I would actually say there's a moment here that I like, which is, I think it's this scene or the next scene, where Hershey confronts him about not having any emotions.
Right.
And he says emotions there ought to be a law against them. I like that line.
This film's groping madly
but he says it with a kind of a smirk.
Yeah. Emotion. Well, is this...
Instead of saying it in...
Coldly. In earnest, yeah. This film's groping madly for a catchphrase.
Yes. Oh my God. Well, it's there. It's, "I knew you were going to say that."
But he says, yeah.
They say it over and over again.
"I knew you were going to say that." It's not up there. Yeah. It's not a great catchphrase. And other stuff too, like, "Court's adjourned."
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah, he delivers one-liners. They're not even...
And
they're like action movie one-liners, which are not all court related. Like there's some, like when he blows up that guy's car, he says something like "Happy Travels" or something stupid. I can't remember what it was, but it was...
It's like they're just throwing everything in there. Maybe too many cooks, like you said. Anyway. Yeah. But so far, so good. I'm actually enjoying the film so far.
Okay. So, as I said, they have this conversation in the locker room, which seems to be a code locker room, which is maybe riffing on... When did Starship Troopers come out?
Way after this.
Oh.
Like 2000. Like 98.
Okay.
I think, or 97.
Yeah. Okay. So, now we meet all the chief judges. We got Jürgen Prochnow in there. Ring the bell for him, please. And Max von Sydow in scenes together.
Duke Leto Atreides.
And Dr. Kynes.
And Dr. Kynes reunited.
Yeah, amazing. I knew Max von Sydow was in this. I'd forgotten Jürgen Prochnow was in this. I was delighted.
They are both absolutely acting.
Oh, yeah.
They're at the top of their game.
Yeah.
This film has some good performances.
Even Diane Lane. Joan Chen shows up later. I'm like, thank you. Joan Chen is here.
Joan Chen, I felt so bad for Joan Chen.
Oh, yeah.
Joan Chen is an amazing actor.
Yeah.
Award-winning actor.
The movie doesn't know what it's doing with her.
Incredible director. Directed one of the most astonishing films I've ever seen. She was The Sent Down Girl. What's she doing in this with her tits out? I don't know. Well, I do know because I read Making of Judge Dredd.
Okay.
One of the writers, I don't remember who, had some kind of hard-on for Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS.
Her name is Ilsa.
Yes, it
yes,
is.
Yes. Okay.
And he wanted a chick fight.
That's almost predictable. As soon as she appears on screen, you're like, oh, her and...
It's the only thing she does in the film. It's the only thing she does. She has no I feel so bad for Joan Chen watching this. She has no reason to be in the film except to get in a cat fight.
Yeah.
Because she has no role. She doesn't do anything.
We'll come back to her.
Her job is to, quote-unquote, look after the facility, but it's been mothballed for 30 years. No one needed to look after it.
Talk about
she never does anything.
Yeah.
She's literally only in there to wear leather and have a sexy fight. Yeah. And it's so annoying.
Yeah.
Anyway, we get the locker room scene. Locker room, one of the 3 or 4 sets in this whole movie.
Yeah. In fact, the hallways in the Hall of Justice seem to be like maybe one hall. They're shooting from different angles.
Yes, they just reuse the same sets over and over. There was only about two sets.
Right. So we've got these Chief Justice... By the way, all the Chief Judges... Max von Sydow, Jürgen Prochnow. They all seem to be foreign. I don't know why they are the heads of...
It's Cannon's idea. He sort of had this idea. He wanted Mega City 1 to be cosmopolitan.
Okay.
To be international.
Okay.
He'd sort of...
A bit like Mystery Men with all those different languages on the street. Or Blade Runner, which this movie is aping in a lot of scenes.
Absolutely.
With all the other languages on the street.
He'd sort of... I'll come back to this a bit later, but Cannon had sort of ideas about how to... A problem the filmmakers had was how to differentiate this from A, Demolition Man, that we've already mentioned, and B, RoboCop, that we've already mentioned. And one of the ideas Cannon came up with was, we'll make it epic. It'll be a Ben-Hur type story.
Okay.
It'll... Something about the fate of a whole society.
Okay.
And to make it seem on a larger scale, we'll have international actors from lots of different countries.
Okay.
Joan Chen, Jürgen Prochnow, Max von Sydow.
Right.
And that'll give us this feeling that it's larger than life. Okay. And that's how we'll move away from, I guess, to embrace the corniness but without being silly. This is what was written in the book I read.
Okay.
Whether or not that was effective, maybe not. But
ask questions.
That was what his thinking was.
Okay. So these judges are like, they believe in a kind of justice and sympathy, right? Except Jürgen Prochnow is like, we need stricter laws.
Yep.
Like, things are getting out of control. We need the judges to be able to execute.
Yeah.
Instead of just imprisoning.
We need to expand it to more minor crimes.
Yes, execution of more minor crimes, exactly.
And, and Max von Sydow as Judge Fargo says something which no judge in 2000 AD would ever have said, which is that, I remember a time when this badge stood for freedom.
Yes.
Not oppression. No judge would ever have said that.
No. I think at this stage you also learn that sometimes... not sometimes. Exactly not sometimes. When a judge retires, they have to go on what's called the long walk.
Yeah. Dredd is doing a couple of days at the academy. Fargo has met with Dredd. They are very kind of like collegial with one another. They obviously care for one another a lot. Fargo says, you need to go to the academy where the judge cadets are. You need to spend a day with them a week, teach them about ethics.
Ethics, yeah.
And then we get another set, which is very much like the others.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the sets are really boring in this film, sadly. Where he's sort of telling them about what it means to be a judge. Here are your tools, he says.
Okay, this academy scene. They're practicing shooting on a dummy that's dressed as a judge. That seems odd to me.
Why?
Then he explains to them, he explains to them how awesome their armor is. That rookie cop in the first scene got shot with one shot. So how good is this Kevlar that Stallone is talking about here?
Obviously not, considering it's the same gun that couldn't hurt Stallone when he was a couple of 100 feet away from when he was, 300 feet away? Whatever. It doesn't, you're right, it doesn't make sense. Instead of talking about ethics, he's just talking about their equipment for our benefit.
Yeah.
This is what a lawgiver is.
Yeah.
It only recognises the judge's handprint.
Yeah.
Incidentally, the court scene specifically says that the lawgiver responds to a judge's skin in order to recognise its DNA. I'm sure you noticed this. The judges wear gloves all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, they do that in the comic too, so...
Yes. Only a judge can use... In the comics, only a judge can use the gun. There's actually two versions of the guns here.
The lawgiver 1 and 2. But you're not getting a DNA sample through those gloves. That's just stupid. He shows them like a bike that doesn't work, and then he shows them a book of laws. That's it. And then he says, and your reward for 20, 30 years service on the streets is you get to make the long walk.
Yeah, which means you walk out into the cursed earth to bring law to the lawless, as it's called in the comic. Now, in the comic, a judge may go on the long walk if they become a little bit mentally unbalanced.
Yeah.
You may get sent out there. You don't have to. You can teach at the academy or just retire or whatever. There's nothing. Why make? It doesn't make any sense that why would anyone want to become a judge if they have to?
Yeah.
Make this walk into the cursed earth.
Why would anyone become? And these aren't 5-year-olds. These are people that are starting as adults.
Yes.
So again,
they haven't been indoctrinated.
No. This isn't like the Jedi Temple.
No.
We're not taking them when they're kids and turning them into weird sexless monks. They're grown adults who have decided to become judges.
Yeah.
Why would you do it?
Yeah.
You get shot at, you don't have a social life, and then at the end of it you walk out into the desert and get shot by mutants.
Yeah.
Why would anyone do this?
Yeah. But by the way, by this stage, Stallone has had the helmet off for a long time.
As soon as Stallone
we almost never see the helmet, barely, for the rest of the movie,
No.
I don't think.
No, he doesn't put it back on until the end of the film.
Yeah.
The last 30 seconds of the film. As soon as he takes the helmet off, the film starts getting crap. That is a coincidence, but it's also not a coincidence.
Yeah.
That's when it stops looking like a 6 to 8 page Judge Dredd comic.
Yeah.
Of Dredd settling block war and sentencing a recently paroled guy.
Yeah, back. Yeah, for trying to survive.
For trying to survive a firefight.
Yeah.
And when it starts to become pompous American nonsense.
Yes.
About a guy trying to find out what justice is.
Yeah. This movie's very American.
Very.
It's not like the comics.
No.
Okay, so now cut to Aspen, Colorado prison.
Yes.
Now we've got a Hannibal Lecter Magneto type cell, which is containing this guy.
Yes. It's his name is Rico, and he's played by Armand Assante, who's absolutely chewing the scenery.
Oh yeah, he's having a great time.
This guy, again, just like a lot of the actors in this movie are taking it 100% seriously. He's doing a Sylvester Stallone impression.
Yes. Yeah.
He's sweating. He looks like he's on cocaine.
Yeah.
His eyes are bulging out of his head. He's sweating all the time, and he's on 11.
Yeah. Yeah. And the warden comes in with a gift from Rico's benefactor.
Well, their benefactor. He says, our mutual benefactor has a gift for you.
Now, okay, so if you were the warden of a prison, would you give a present to a prisoner that you had not checked what that present was, what the contents were?
That would not happen. And the only explanation is that he's corrupt.
Right.
So that's covered by
But what is he getting from the benefactor? What is the warden getting from
money, I guess. His benefactor has a lot of power. Spoiler, his benefactor is on the Judge Council.
Yeah, it's Prochnow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Jürgen Prochnow. And so he's presumably he can do anything for this warden.
Okay.
So that's in fact why Rico is still alive, because we find out later in the film that Rico was sentenced to death.
Ah, okay.
So Prochnow 20 years ago?
Yeah.
Because Rico's been in prison for 20 years.
Yeah.
20 years ago, Prochnow had enough power to put Rico in jail rather than having him put to death to conceal him, and has been paying off the warden or wardens for 20 years.
Yeah.
Bit stupid. And then why would this warden bring Rico this thing without at least, we're in the future here, X-ray it? Because it's a gun.
Yeah, it does turn out to be a gun. Also, why would the warden himself be the one to perform?
Oh, because he's corrupt. He doesn't want his own released.
All right.
But why? Well, I guess that's the same reason he didn't check it. He doesn't want it.
It's the same benefactor. It's like, this is our guy. Okay. Whatever.
He doesn't want a paper trail. But why not?
But then Rico kills him.
Why not just make it a knife?
Yeah.
Why a gun?
He needs to escape with it. Yeah. And there's a photo of a journalist that we've seen in a few previous scenes who's like this journalist is going to investigate the judges for corruption. So he escapes.
Rico shoots the warden in the neck. There's a kind of cool sequence where the warden has disabled all security in the cell except for the voice-activated guns. Rico shoots him in the throat. The guns don't recognize his voice anymore, and they shoot the warden. Kind of cool and ironic.
Yeah.
Then Rico kind of dangles below the Magneto platform. The judge guards run in. Rico pulls himself back up. He's in pretty good shape despite being in prison for 20 years, eating prison food. He takes them out. He steals their guns. He busts out. He hides himself in a body bag. For some reason, the prison in the Cursed Earth ships the bodies of the dead back to Mega City 1.
Yeah.
Why?
Why? Also, didn't they count the bodies? Like, didn't they have an extra body? Did they check who was in? I don't know how any of this is working.
Nope, that doesn't work. Anyway.
Okay, so he comes back to town. So now we have a scene where Judge Dredd seemingly kills the.
We have some stuff in between.
Oh yeah, they're like the car. There's a guy with this guy in a Lamborghini, a future Lamborghini, having parking problems, and Judge Hershey tries to bust him for it.
And he's mouthing off about his powerful friends.
Yeah.
Who are his powerful friends? The only people who have power are judges.
Yeah. Maybe he's lying, or maybe he knows some judges.
But we're supposed they put this scene in so that we would be pro Judge Dredd after his very kind of like authoritarian actions in earlier scenes. Like this is, I can confirm this because I read it in the book.
Right.
That's why this scene is in the film. Except he can't have powerful friends.
Yeah.
No one has power in Mega City 1 except the judges.
Right.
So he's literally saying, I'm friends with the incorruptible judges and they are going to get me off. Mm-hmm. You're saying this to Dredd?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it doesn't add up.
Nope.
And then Judge Dredd blows up his car with a grenade.
We're supposed to thrill to this.
Yes.
So this is why the scene is in there. This guy was an asshole, and assholes deserve to have their cars blown up.
Yeah. By the way, he's listening to White Zombie, which I thought, when I thought it was 1,000 years in the future, I thought that doesn't make sense. But I guess if it's only 50 years from now, then...
It's the future version of pretentious classical music.
Yes,
White Zombie. We're supposed to hate him for listening to White Zombie. Rico shows up at a pawn shop.
Yes.
Called the Geiger Bazaar.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Not Giga, unfortunately. It's Geiger for Geiger counter.
Right.
As in a radiation meter. Yeah. He goes in, he says, you got a package for me? How does he know this guy has a package for him? I don't know. There was only a photo in that package.
Maybe there was some stuff under the photo.
Maybe. There's a fully functional death robot.
Yep, an ABC
in this
Warrior.
pawn shop, which is from another 2000 AD comic written by Pat Mills.
Yeah.
This particular ABC Warrior, this giant robot, is a specific character from ABC Warriors called Hammerstein.
Right. Right. Okay.
Minus his hammer, though.
Okay.
Rico is given the package. He opens it with his thumbprint.
Right.
Maybe his DNA.
Yes.
This film has DNA does a lot of work in this movie.
Yes.
And I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
Do I want to talk about it? We will talk about it. The writers did not know what DNA is.
You know what? It's funny to me because usually when I watch a Hollywood movie about clones, Hollywood does not know what a clone is.
Nope.
Hollywood is like, one clone is evil. I'm like, no, a clone is just a twin. Imagine two twins. One of them is not evil. One is not a evil copy of the other. It's just two people with the same DNA.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And watching this movie is,
This movie does,
it goes the opposite way.
Yeah.
And I kind of was like, oh, that's good in the sense that, clones don't necessarily they won't have the same fingerprints or other things that...
No, they don't have the same fingerprints.
Or necessarily even the same hair. Like, if you clone two cats, they're not going to have the same hair pattern. You know what I mean? So, I was kind of like... But then this movie goes the opposite way, that there's the clones... No understanding of clones in the opposite direction. Because Rico, as we know from the comics, is a clone... He's cloned from the same batch as Dredd.
Dredd and Rico are both clones of Judge Fargo.
They have the same DNA.
Yes.
They have the exact same DNA, but they don't look or act the same.
No. Well, not acting the same is one thing. Not look, because identical twins don't necessarily act the same. Because
they don't, but they say that he's the perfect. He mutated into the perfect criminal.
Well, they don't know what mutation is.
How did that happen? Because his DNA is the same.
I mean, it gets even better because later on, I don't want to talk about the Janus Project scene yet.
Yeah.
But they do not know what DNA is or how it works.
He starts cloning himself at the end of the movie. Let's spoil it. He starts cloning himself, and the clones are male and female. So, do you know what cloning is? Do you know what DNA is?
Yeah. But it's even better, which we'll get to. Okay. It's even better. Remember Lamarckism, because we'll come back to that word when I talk about when I talk about what's going on with the cloning in the Janus scene. Right. But to wind it way back, he's back in the pawn shop. There's a death robot in there. He activates the death robot. He opens this case that the pawn guy gives him. Inside, which is activated by his thumbprint. Maybe, if it's his thumbprint, maybe that makes sense. If it's his DNA, that opens a whole can of worms. Mm-hmm. Inside is a judge's outfit and a lawgiver.
Yeah.
He goes to pick up the lawgiver. The pawn shop guy says, "Whoa, don't touch that. That's a judge's weapon. If you touch it, if you're not a judge and you touch that, it'll kill you."
Yeah.
He picks it up. It's fine. And he says, "How about that? I must be a judge." And then he shoots the pawn shop guy. So far, so good.
Stage very similar to the shooting of the gun store guy in Terminator 1.
Right.
Which was also written by Wisher.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. I have no trouble believing that it's very... Yeah, you're right. And in fact, this isn't a pawn shop. It's actually a gun shop.
Right. Yeah.
Because on the outside, it looks like a pawn shop. It's called a bazaar.
Yeah.
But on the other signs on the outside say things like machine guns, rocket launchers available here.
But the staging is the same where you see the shot and you don't see the person getting shot. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
Anyway.
So, first of all, why? Why has Rico been given a judge's outfit and a lawgiver?
Well, we know why. From the following scene when the reporter is assassinated.
Yes. We do know why.
Seemingly by Judge Dredd on video. We get a video and we're shown what looks like Judge Dredd in full armor with the Dredd badge come in and shoot the reporter and his wife in cold blood in their apartment.
Except the badge is Rico.
Does it say Rico? Surely the badge says Dredd.
Another thing. So who's giving... I want you to remember this. Who's giving Rico this outfit and this gun? It's got to be Jürgen Prochnow.
Yes.
Right? And there is no reason why he would give him this judge paraphernalia unless he was going to use it for that thing that you mentioned.
Judge Dredd, yeah.
Frame Judge Dredd. Yeah. Please hold on to that thought.
Okay.
All right. Let's move on. Okay. As you said, the next thing that happens is we see the reporter getting shot by what looks like Judge Dredd. We know, though, it's Rico in that outfit.
Yeah, after the business with the car, Judge Dredd is arrested on the street.
He's arrested by what are called judge hunters, who are guys, so kind of like judges in black.
Yeah.
There's an inexhaustible supply of them.
Yeah.
These are, I guess, the film equivalent of the SRS from the comics.
Okay.
Who are Judge Caligula's
yes, that's right. Yeah.
guys.
Yep.
They're the sort of the guys that watch the Watchers. There are a lot of these judge hunters. How often are they used? A plot point in this movie is that they're running out of judges later on when judges start getting killed.
This is... let's get back to that.
Why not deploy some of these judge hunters as street judges?
Well, also, this is a city of 600 million people.
No. I'm so sorry, Kumar.
If 80 judges die, what difference does it make? If 30 judges die?
Yeah. Unfortunately, and I hate to say this, in the comics it's 600 million people, absolutely.
Okay.
And that makes sense because it's a city that occupies an entire, many hundreds of thousands of kilometres.
Yes.
In the film it's 65 million.
But the size of the city is still the same.
No.
We know there's a map.
It's smaller. It's smaller.
When the judges are looking at a map, the Chief Justice are looking at a glowing map and the table, and you get three cities. The three cities there, Meg City 1, Meg City 2, and Texas City.
They're much smaller.
No, you can see the glow from coast to coast.
Watch the film, everyone, and make up your own minds.
Okay.
If I'm wrong, I'll eat crow. But they say I'm pretty sure Max von Sydow says 65 million people.
Okay.
Not 650 million. 65 million might have seemed comically large in 1994.
Okay.
I can't imagine it did, but the largest city in the world is Tokyo. Greater Tokyo, the greater metropolitan Tokyo area, has 41 million people.
Okay.
And we don't need judges there yet.
Right.
Go figure.
Okay, so then Dredd is put on trial.
Incidentally, the only person that gets a trial. Why does Dredd get a trial?
Yes. Great question. Why don't they just judge him?
Yep. Everyone else gets judged.
Yeah. Bizarre. So we have this bizarre courtroom scene with all this, the DNA evidence. We find out that the DNA, that Dredd was actually using a Lawgiver 2, which is a new type of gun which actually takes the DNA, reads
tags,
the DNA.
Not only do you need it to use your gun, but it tags each individual bullet with a serial code that identifies the DNA of the user.
Yeah.
This is 100% feels like something that's in the story, in the film, so that the plot can happen.
Yes.
In real life, no gun would do this.
Yeah.
Especially not a judge gun, because we've, as you said, the writers of this film will have read the America/Democracy arc.
Yeah.
The judges don't care about due process. Mm-hmm. They only care about keeping the city quote-unquote safe,
Yeah.
according to their own definition. There is no way they would have this kind of accountability mechanism because they are only accountable to themselves.
Exactly. And not only that,
there's no legislature.
Having a gun that only the judge can use makes sense because they don't want civilians using the guns. Stop there.
Having bullets that are tagged
with the DNA, so you know who shot what.
It's only there so that the plot can happen. Yeah. And the thing is, it didn't even need to. All they needed to say was, we found this lawgiver at the scene and it's Judge Dredd's lawgiver.
And the video of Rico with Dredd's badge. You
didn't even need the fucking bullets being tagged with the ID. It's so fucking annoying. And before that, in the scene, there's this scene where Judge Hershey's like, they show the video evidence of Dredd shooting, well, Rico in Dredd's uniform shooting the lawyer, the journalist and his wife. And then Hershey stands up and says, this video is really grainy. Yeah. And I've got an expert witness, Cadet so-and-so, like a judge cadet. This is like 19-year-old guy.
Yeah.
He says that this video quality is sufficiently poor that it could be anyone in it. I rest my case. Law and Order, this is not.
Yeah.
And then she says to Judge Dredd, admit it, you're impressed.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah, a lot of nonsense. Okay, but now we learn, Jürgen, Leto and Kainis go off and have a conversation about themselves. Where he's like, we're going to go out and view the spice mining operations Harvester.
Well, they know what's going on. Or do they?
No, they do, because they reveal that there's a cloning thing and it must be Rico or something. They know...
Liet Kynes should know better.
Yeah.
Judge Fargo should know better. He knows there are clones.
Yeah.
But he thinks Rico's dead. He thinks Rico was put to death 20 years ago.
Right.
He says, I can't believe they both turned out to be murderers.
Right.
Meaning both...
Right, okay.
Meaning both Joe Dredd and Rico Dredd.
Yeah.
But he should know that it's possible for more than one person to have the same DNA and use a lawgiver. Incidentally, Dredd and Rico were judges at the same time, 20 years earlier. Did their lawgivers, were they just mutually exchangeable? Or did they not have the DNA recognizable lawgivers at that time?
No, they didn't. This is a new thing which is revealed during the court case that such a thing exists.
Also, Fargo himself has the same DNA as Rico.
Is it or is it modified?
He does say it was modified. Okay. He does say it was modified.
To make the perfect judge.
To make the perfect judge.
Yet somehow they ended up different.
Yeah.
One ended up the perfect criminal, one was the perfect judge. From the DNA, not
because of free will.
Not from nurture.
And individualism. Anyway, so Fargo is worried about... Fargo is noble. He's worried about the system collapsing and everything going to shit.
Yeah.
And he says, and that's what will happen now. Because if Judge Dredd is found guilty, they will dig up the Janus Project. I don't know who they is. The population? The population that doesn't care about anything and just shoot one another. And the investigative journalist is already dead. But he says they will find out about the Janus Project if Dredd is sentenced. And Jürgen Prochnow, Duke Leto, says, well, there's a solution. You can commute Dredd's sentence if you resign and go on the long walk.
Yes, you're allowed one last wish. A judge who goes on the long walk is allowed to have a final wish.
It's convention that their last order is obeyed. And Jürgen Prochnow, Max von Sydow's last order is that Judge Dredd's sentence is commuted to life imprisonment instead of death. Problem. Judge Dredd has still been convicted of murder.
Yeah.
The fact whether he's been executed or not doesn't affect his sentencing. Yeah. So the people that are interested in finding out what happened will still be interested in finding out what happened.
Yeah.
Second of all, this is presented as Jürgen Prochnow's plan. Jürgen Prochnow wanted Dredd to be framed so that Max von Sydow, Judge Fargo, would be forced to choose between resigning or letting Dredd be executed. Except, a couple of scenes from now, Jürgen Prochnow confronts Rico and says, why did you frame Dredd? I could have used him.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. Goodbye, plot.
Yeah.
That just ruined everything.
Yeah.
What was Jürgen Prochnow's plan then? How was he going to seize power? Why did he give...
It's worse than that. Because Judge Dredd gets on a prisoner transport to fly him over to Aspen Prison.
Yep.
They're shot down by hillbillies on the way.
The Angel family.
The Angel family, who are from the comics, or the Judge Child storyline.
Yeah.
once they crash, because they're shot down by these cannibals, suddenly Prochnow's on the phone to his people saying, I want everybody on that flight dead.
Yeah.
He didn't shoot down the plane.
No.
Why does he want they weren't...
Why not just rescue them? Because he's evil.
Does he want Dredd alive or dead? At this stage...
He says he wanted Dredd...
He wants Dredd dead. He says he wants... But he didn't shoot down that plane.
No. Also, why would he want everyone else on the plane dead? There's no reason why they couldn't rescue the pilot. But he says kill everybody.
Yeah.
Why kill everybody?
Yeah.
Because he's evil.
By a plane that was shot down by somebody else? Is this just by coincidence?
We'll be confused that... Yeah, the plane's shot down by coincidence. Prochnow really, really, really needs Dredd to not come back to the city.
Yeah.
So, I suppose...
He heard about the plane being shot down and was like, hey, you better kill these guys instead of getting them back to prison.
Why not just find Dredd and take him to prison?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Because he's evil.
Yeah.
And we're not allowed to forget that. Because in American films, someone has to be bad and another person has to be good.
Yes.
So...
By the way, Max von Sydow walks out into the desert.
Looking rad. This seems...
I have to say, you can't help but think of Dr. Kynes walking out into the desert to his death.
It is like that.
The Harkonnen send him out there, strip his stillsuit off of him, send him out to die.
Yep.
Come on.
Yeah, of course.
I'm here cheering.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. I loved it. He looks rad as hell. He's wearing this amazing kind of trench coat. Yeah. He's got a shotgun.
Yeah.
Man, if only Dr. Kynes had that kind of gear.
Yeah.
Instead of his busted swimsuit. Stillsuit.
Yeah. Okay, so we get onto this flight, this prisoner flight. Rob Schneider happens to be on that same flight, sitting next to Dredd.
He sort of holds up his hand to cover the upper half of Dredd's face, and that's when he recognizes...
And he goes, Dredd? That was, I believe, in the trailer. I remember seeing it. And I remember thinking, good little bit.
Yeah, it is a good little bit. The only bits I laughed at in this adaptation of a heavily satirical comic were these buddy cop moments.
Right. Right.
Unfortunately.
Right. But I just thought it was a clever little moment to just put his hand up like that and realize...
It's funny.
Yeah.
And Rob Schneider never stops saying Dredd.
Yeah.
You just want to throttle him.
Oh.
He keeps getting Dredd in trouble.
I come back to remind me about him. When they come back to the city, there's a key moment. Anyway. So they're on this flight, and because he keeps saying Dredd, the other prisoners are like, Dredd's on this flight? Yeah. And one of these guys has a knife. Now, this is a prisoner transport. What, are you not checking for knives? This is like giving that guy a present in the maximum, like Hannibal Lecter that present in that cell. This is madness.
Why does he have a knife?
Check for knives,
How
please.
Could he have a knife? This is the future.
Yeah.
You haven't got an X-ray machine? You haven't got a metal detector?
Crazy. Okay, so, he attacks Dredd, but then the Hillbillies Angel family from the comics show up and they shoot down the plane, but they're cannibals in this version.
They're not cannibals? I'm sure they're cannibals in the comic, aren't they?
I don't
Well, you read it.
I don't think it was ever mentioned they were cannibals. They're absolutely homicidal. They're crazy about killing, and the son, Junior, especially, is like, please, Paul, let me kill him.
Yeah.
And then Paul's like, no, son, you gotta wait to kill. And then, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
One of the sons is called Mean Machine.
He's amazing.
He's got this cyborg arm. In the comics, he's got this big cyborg arm, and he's got a dial on his head that goes from 1 to 4.
Yeah.
And however high up he dials it is how aggressive.
Homicidally aggressive he is.
That's right.
It's so cool.
And when he turns it on, he starts headbutting stuff.
Yep.
This is his thing. He headbutts like crazy. In the comic, he ends up getting his biological arm shot off by Dredd during the Judge Child adventure.
Really? I thought he was one-armed all. I thought he lost his arm as a child or something.
No, he's got one robot arm, one normal arm until the end, and then Dredd shoots one off, and then he dials himself with the 4. Dredd hits him with a chain, which locks him on a 4.5, which sends him berserk, and he starts headbutting everything, including these like petrol stands, and he blows up, and he blows up with it.
So Judge Dredd.
It's great. He
had 2 arms originally. Because I always think of him as having one.
Well,
just the one big cyborg arm.
Well, in this version, certainly in the movie, he's only got one cyborg arm, which makes you wonder why he only has one arm in the movie. Well, you're like, why can't you build him a second robot arm?
Well, I always think of him as having one arm.
Of course, we do think of him that way.
He's amazingly lopsided.
Yes.
He's a great lopsided monster with his robot head and his one huge arm and his missing arm and his dial. He's such a great character.
Yeah, absolutely. And his headbutting.
And he's called Mean Machine Angel.
Yes.
It's such a rock and roll name.
Yes.
And he looks really cool in this movie. They've got a stuntman, a creature actor. They've popped him in this outfit. It's it's taken a day to get him in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was only a single prop for that cyborg arm, so they had to be really careful with it.
Okay.
And the guy in the suit is hamming it up.
Yeah.
I salute you.
By the way, the dad and the angels... Oh, there's a lot of uncredited actors in this movie.
Right.
I can't remember the name of this actor, but he's in a lot of the Walking Dead TV series.
Okay.
The dad.
Appropriate.
I'd recognize... Maybe Scott Wilson, maybe?
Pa Angel.
Yeah, Pa Angel, yeah. But they escape from the cannibals through just escaping.
Well, Judge Fargo shows up. Saves him.
Yes, that's right. And then he's shot immediately.
Stabbed, actually, by Mean Machine.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Stabbed by Mean Machine. Because he's out there in the wasteland, just happened to stumble across them.
How far away is this from Mega City 1?
Well,
how far was the plane
we know
flying?
that the flight is 4 hours, I think. How far
Judge
were they
Fargo
on this
just
flight?
happens to show up on foot.
Yep.
Whatever. Stabbed instantly.
Yep.
That's when Judge Fargo reveals the truth, which is that Dredd was cloned.
Yeah.
That's why Sylvester Stallone is wearing blue contacts, so he can have blue eyes like Max von Sydow.
Why does, where is the Angel family living? Because there's a giant statue of Lady Justice.
Yeah, why do they have that?
Are they in, like, an old courthouse?
Don't know. It's just there so that Max von Sydow can say, Justice!
And there's a lot of lightning happening. Aren't they indoors? There's, like...
They are indoors, but it's the cursed earth. There's crazy lightning going on all the time out there. Incidentally, this film was shot entirely in the UK.
Okay.
Almost entirely. In the Shepperton Studios. Except for a very brief segment that was shot in Iceland.
Huh.
And that's this, not the Angel family sequence. And the Angel family were only shot in the UK.
Okay.
But do you remember when the shuttle crashes and we have some of those judge hunters sort of standing around a burning chassis?
Yeah.
That's the sole non-UK, non-set shot, and it's just a random volcanic hill in Iceland.
Oh, okay.
In summer, so no snow, but just looking black and blasted.
Yeah.
A good kind of setting for the cursed earth. That wreckage there is an actual plane crash that they discovered by accident when...
Right.
When hunting for a shoot.
Wow. Okay.
So they just went to it, set it on fire, and scattered a few other things about.
Amazing. Okay. By the way, meanwhile, back at Mega City 1, Judge Hershey continues to investigate this case.
Yep.
She finds this baby photo of Dredd with his parents. Turns out to be done with some crap CGI. Well, actually amazing CGI, because they're able to reverse engineer it to what was originally behind the photo using this cadet judge.
It was because of the cadet guy who I was paying out the movie earlier for including, but actually it was a Chekhov's gun to establish that he knows digital imagery.
Yeah.
He's able to hack the photo and reveal what it originally was, which is Baby Dredd in a lab. Right. So Hershey, for no reason, goes to set 3 of 4, which is the locker room.
Yeah.
And hacks into Judge Dredd's locker. Why? Don't know. What's inside Judge Dredd's locker? Aside from copies of The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, there's also these photos. One photo of him with Rico, and one photo of him as a baby. She tries to look up who Rico was. The system shuts down.
Yeah.
Revokes her access. So she takes, for some reason, both photos to Cadet What's-His-Name. Asks him to investigate the Rico photo, but he investigates the other one by accident.
Well, this is interesting, because that photo does not look like it could have been taken anywhere in Mega City 1.
Right.
It looks like a couple
it's
in
outdoors.
a park. Outdoors. It looks like 1995.
Yep. And there are no plants. Famously no plants in Mega City 1.
Yeah.
In fact, the filmmakers were aware of this. There's no wood anywhere in the film.
Right.
Except in... there's no wood anywhere in the film.
Yeah.
Especially not in any of the Mega City 1 sets. They deliberately only used metal, glass, and plastic.
Yeah.
And yet this photo is it's in front of a tree. That should have been suspicious.
Yeah.
Why didn't Judge Dredd go, hey, what's this tree doing here? This has got suspicious.
It's a bit like the photos in Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Which look like there's no way... This photo's 100 years old.
Yep.
How could this be your mother?
Enhance. This is straight out of Blade Runner again. Like you said, this movie's riffing on much better movies. So the cadet, what's-his-face, analyzes the wrong photo. He says to her, this one's just full of digital artifacts. The only real thing is the baby.
Yeah.
He presses some buttons, everything dissolves, it's a lab, and a baby...
How do you do that?
Yeah, how do you do that? Whatever.
Okay, now we get to the...
But we already know, so this scene serves no purpose because it's already been revealed.
Yeah, well, it's just for Hershey to learn about the clones.
It should have come earlier.
Yeah.
The scene should have come before the scene with Fargo. And it's after.
Yes.
Why do that?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, now we get to the Janus Project with Joan Chen. So, Rico shows up. She has a contentious relationship with him. She's angry at him for, like... This guy's been in prison for 20 years. I don't think she knows...
She doesn't know who he is.
But she's acting like she's like, you're a bad guy kind of stuff. Like, she knows, as if they have some kind of past relationship. And in fact, it plays out that way in subsequent scenes as well. Like, as if they know each other for a while.
But she wasn't involved in the original project because she's too young. Because this is Joan Chen in her 30s. She's too young to be involved in the original Janus project, which happened 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Why is she so hostile?
Yeah.
I don't know. The screenwriters felt like they needed more interpersonal conflict.
No. And here's the weird thing. So now, suddenly, Rico starts sabotaging the judges. Like, he's planting traps for them.
Well, this is...
And they're blowing up. They're going into, like, bank robberies, and the bank blows up, and 12 judges die, etc. Yeah. And
it's a pretty cool scene, actually.
The numbers are rising. There's a scene
where... They kill 100 judges in a day. This all happens in 3 days.
Yeah. So there's a scene, one particular scene where some judges get killed on the street, and then out of the shadows emerges Rico. But also Joan Chen is with him. Yeah. Why? Why is she on this...
Yeah, her job is to look after the Janus project.
She's there to look after the clones.
Except she doesn't do that.
No,
because Rico
but even then, why is she down on the street with Rico watching judges be killed?
Yeah, exactly. Why? There's no reason. What's Jürgen Prochnow's plan? Joan Chen is looking after the Janus facility. That's her job, to grow clones. Rico's job is to be on the street, causing, fucking shit up, so that the council will agree to reactivate Janus.
And to make the laws harsher.
Incidentally, Prochnow was already Chief Justice.
Yeah.
Or whatever they call that, head of the council. He's already got his goal. That's what he wanted, presumably. And yet, his goals seem to be changing. Now he wants Janus back. He doesn't need Janus back. He's head of the council.
Yeah.
Prochnow was pleading with Max von Sydow to increase the death penalty. Presumably, Max von Sydow had that power when he was Chief Justice. When Prochnow is Chief Justice, presumably he now has that power. Yeah. Except now he has a new plan.
Yeah.
His new plan is to reactivate Janus. And he can't reactivate Janus unless there's chaos on the streets. But that wasn't his plan before. Okay, so Rico is causing chaos. Joan Chen's looking after the Janus project. Except Joan Chen is on the street with Rico. And the only person that does any work in the Janus facility is Rico.
Yeah.
Joan Chen does nothing there.
Yeah.
If you were Jürgen Prochnow, would you give the psycho access to the cloning facility?
Yeah.
Would you say, you'll be in charge of this? Crazy guy with the huge robot that could kill me at any time. You can be in charge of growing clones. Now, the dumbest thing happens. Rico shows up in the council has agreed to reopen the Janus files. You need the files in order to run the facility. Okay. 100 judges have died in a day. It'll take 10 years to replace those numbers, even if they put cadets in the street. Prochnow says, what if I could tell you that the Janus project could put judges on the street in 8 hours? No explanation as to how they're going to train these judges.
Yeah.
These are like clones, fully grown clones with what? The minds of infants?
Well, when they come out unformed, they start attacking people.
Yeah. Is that the recipe for a successful kind of army?
I don't know.
The writers don't understand what cloning is. They think cloning is like copying a person entirely.
Yes.
That's what they think it is.
Including their memories and training and everything.
That's what they think it is. And I know that's what they think it is because of what happens next, which is the stupidest thing ever. Rico's in charge of the facility. He rocks up and he says to the computer, begin making clones. And the computer says, the sample has been thawed. Shall I prepare clones from the sample? He says, no, throw out the sample. I'm going to give you a new sample. Me. And he puts his arm in this machine that takes a sample of him. Okay. The 40-year-old sample is the sample that Rico was grown from. It is his DNA. He threw out his DNA and replaced it with his DNA.
Was the original sample not corrupted or something like that? Or 40?
No, it wasn't corrupted. No. He specifically instructed the computer to throw it out.
Yeah.
And then when Jürgen Prochnow comes in and says, what's going on? And Rico says, I'm growing new clones from my new DNA. And he says, what do you mean new DNA? That original sample was harvested from the council. It's the greatest judges that ever lived.
Yeah.
And Rico says, well, now, it's going to be an even better judge, me. But it's his DNA.
Okay, here's another question about the scene. Joan Chen is shocked that he's doing this. She's like, don't do that, you can't do that, you can't replace the DNA. Then she turns, maybe a moment later, turns away, turns her back to him and smiles. What is that?
I don't know. She's been convinced. I don't know.
Why does she smile at him? Why does she have to hide that she's pleased with his decision?
Don't know.
It was such a bizarre moment that they focus on her face as she's smiling secretly with her back turned to...
Makes no
I think
sense.
Jürgen's in that scene as well. I don't know what was going on.
No sense. Alright, so to return to DNA and its foibles. The writers think, as you pointed out, that Rico, as a crazy person, has crazy DNA.
Yeah.
And that his clones will be crazy. Mm-hmm. So I mentioned Lamarckism before. Lamarckism is kind of an older idea about evolution, that our offspring will inherit the traits that we acquired in life.
Right. So if your hand gets cut off,
your kids will have no hand.
Your kids will have no hand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This film thinks that Lysenkoism is real.
Yeah.
Lysenkoism, that's the Soviet guy. Lamarckism. Lysenko was a Lamarckist. Anyway, they think that he's giving the machine crazy DNA, so there will be crazy clones that will be copies of Rico now. But that's not how cloning works. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think even as a kid watching this movie, I knew this, and it was driving me nuts. Yeah. Why did I, what was I, like 13 when this movie came out? Why, as a 13-year-old, did I know better than the scriptwriters?
Yeah. Okay, meanwhile, Stallone is sneaking back into the city. For some reason, Rob Schneider is still hanging out with him. I don't know.
Because the movie's become a buddy movie. Buddy cop movie by this point.
Yeah. Okay, so they sneak in. They have to sneak in through this incinerator that fires every 30 seconds, blah, blah. While they're going through the tunnel of this incinerator, Rob Schneider trips on nothing.
Yep.
And then can't get up. He's like, Dredd! As if his leg is broken or something.
Yeah, why can't he get up?
Why can't he
He just fell down.
Yeah.
His foot's not even stuck, because Dredd just goes back and picks him up. Incidentally, this is longer than 30 seconds.
Yes. Yeah, they sneak into the Hall of Justice, into the locker room. I'm not sure how Rob Schneider got in there past security, even if Dredd got him in there. Didn't they strip Dredd's credentials? How did he get in there?
Yeah, exactly. How did Dredd get in there? They took all of his stuff away from him in a dramatic scene.
Yep.
How did Dredd get in?
He steals an outfit from a judge.
Yep.
Now, as he's leaving, another judge turns and says, I know who you are.
It's because Rob Schneider keeps saying, Dredd! Dredd!
Exactly. Schneider keeps saying Dredd. Dredd's got blood on his face in some scenes and not on others.
Yeah.
But my favorite part of the scene is that the actor's lips don't move when he says, I know who you are.
Whoops.
And it's like ADR, it's his not like the back of his head. You're looking at his face, not his lips not moving, and him saying, I know who you are. And then Dredd knocks him out.
Yep.
Okay. So Dredd has stolen this judge's uniform so he can walk around. This is the only scene where he wears a helmet.
It fits him perfectly. Whatever.
Yeah. And then he gets onto one of those super bikes and flies out. We get a chase that, we've had this...
Rico kills the council, I think.
Yes, at some stage, yeah.
And then Dredd shows up and confronts Jürgen Prochnow. Jürgen Prochnow shoots himself in the arm.
Yeah.
Then tells the judges that come in that...
For some reason, Dredd did not judge Rico on sight.
Yeah,
just
why
let
not?
him run away.
Why did he do that?
Yeah, don't know.
Why didn't he judge Prochnow?
Yeah. Well...
He's holding him at gunpoint. Well, maybe he doesn't know the extent of his crimes at that point.
Okay, so now he's on the run from the other judges in the hall. He gets on this bike. We have a chase that's similar to something from Fifth Element or episode 2 a few years later after this. But there's a moment here where one of the bikes flies through a hologram, which is like a chopping hologram, which chops the bike explodes when it hits the light.
Yeah, that's not how holograms work.
No, why is this hologram switching on and off like this, like it's like two shutters in the first place?
It's like that scene from Galaxy Quest with the choppers.
Yes. And
well,
then,
screw that!
Yes. Yes. And then why does it blow up a vehicle? Because you can see it coming. They're building up to this thing is going to blow someone up if it hits
like an Indiana Jones moment with something coming down. Except it's light. It's a hologram.
It's a hologram.
Holograms.
Yeah. Okay, so back at the lab, which is in the Statue of Liberty, by the way, which has been moved to the center of Mega City 1, they say, which is actually not the case because it's in the New York section of it, I think.
In the comic, it's cool because they've built a huge statue of a judge, indistinguishable from Dredd.
Much bigger.
About twice as tall as the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
And it stands over the Statue of Liberty. I mean, subtle messaging this is not. But in the film, we have the Statue of Liberty for no reason. For no reason, it's in the middle of... They've moved to the middle of the city. It's not on the island anymore, Rikers Island or whatever it is. And it's surrounded by buildings taller than it, but that doesn't mean anything.
In fact, I want to say, apropos of nothing, there is a moment in the America storyline where they ambush this freedom fighter, this pro-democracy, this woman that's been advocating for democracy. And all the judges are lined up in the crown, and they shoot out of the crown and kill her.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, again, one of these on-the-nose moments, and I'm like, yeah, please give me that moment on the nose. It's fine. And I don't know, there's no irony in the lab being in the crown.
No. It's just...
Because the Janus program is not like, you don't get a sense of it being like a symbol of how corrupt the judge program is or anything like that. Because it's not the judges, it's a secret program that judges don't even know about.
Most judges anyway, and the council knows about it. And they moved, and the lab was there, and they moved the Statue of Liberty on top of it later.
Yes.
Because that's how they find it.
Yeah.
But, as you said, there is no reason for the Statue of Liberty to be... There is no thematic or metaphorical reason for the Statue of Liberty to be on top of... There is nothing particularly illiberal about Janus.
Exactly, yeah. That's it. It's not anti-Statue of Liberty.
Right.
Like the judge is shooting out of her crown.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
This is the scene where Rico gets... programs or orders the ABC robot to rip off the arms and legs of Jürgen Prochnow in a weird moment.
Apparently, originally we got that.
Oh, wow.
We saw that originally.
Okay.
Yeah, so this film got an R rating.
Yeah.
But someone wanted it to be PG-13.
Okay.
So you got an R rating anyway. But there were a lot of edits to tone down the violence. This is a famous, like, Judge Dredd, famously violent comic, where the violence is over the top.
Yeah.
Yet, someone, Stallone, wanted the rating dropped so as to appeal to their quote-unquote core demographic, the most popular demographic, the PG-13 demographic.
You know, that's okay because the comic would be PG-13. I wouldn't mind that, but again, this movie doesn't know what it wants.
No, it doesn't.
It is kind of trying to be...
I don't think you can make a Judge Dredd comic that's not rated R, frankly. There's a lot of violence all the time.
That is true, actually, in terms of violence. Yeah, that is true.
I think if you're trying to tone it down to a PG-13, you don't get it.
This is where we get the big fight. The clones are all awakened.
They don't do much, though. They just sort of look...
No, they lumber around like Frankenstein's, kind of.
They don't really get into any fights.
This is where we get the fight between Hershey and Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS. And this is where, predictably, because they're on the Statue of Liberty, Rico falls off.
Yes, he falls off the Statue of Liberty.
Like all villains always do.
Yep, just like Hans Gruber.
Yeah.
So, Rico, to return to him for a moment, what does he want? So, when Rico's in jail, he's doing what Jürgen Prochnow wants, busting out and killing this reporter. Mm-hmm. Why does he kill the reporter? So he can frame Dredd for it.
Yeah.
Why does he frame Dredd? We know that Jürgen Prochnow doesn't want him to frame Dredd because he tells him off for it later. Why give him the lawgiver and the uniform then if you didn't want him to frame Dredd? There's no other reason why you would give him those things. Whatever. Moving on. He frames Dredd because he wants to revenge on Dredd. So Dredd gets sent either killed or sent to the prison. Yet when Dredd comes back from prison, now Rico, what does he want now? He has a big speech with him in the Janus facility where he wants him to join him. Yeah. He wants him to be Chief Justice of the Judges Council.
Yeah.
And he has this talk about freedom versus conformity or something that the scriptwriters clearly think is some sort of clever ideological choice for Dredd to make. Because he's saying all things like, I rejected law to embrace freedom, and you rejected freedom to embrace law. Now choose, Dredd. But that's not what you wanted earlier.
No.
Earlier you just wanted him to go to jail.
Yeah.
Or probably killed, since the sentence for murder is death.
Yeah.
And now he's telling him all this stuff about, I'm your only family, you have to be on my side, all this stuff. But he didn't want that. Now he's gone from wanting revenge to wanting to, I suppose, run Mega City 1 with his army of clones, both male and female, that are the same as him.
Yeah.
That wasn't his goal earlier. I like Armand Assante's performance.
Yes. Yep.
But the character of Rico doesn't make any sense.
Every actor in this movie. I mean, Diane Lane, Joan Chen, Max von Sydow, Jürgen Prochnow.
There are some A-list actors in this movie. Even Stallone himself can certainly act.
Yeah.
He's an Academy Award-winning filmmaker.
Yep.
And yet it's so dumb.
Yep. Yep.
And then, why give Dredd these choices? You wanted him dead a few scenes earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, bizarre. By the way, what if Max von Sydow had decided to accept Dredd's sentence of death?
That's the end of the movie then.
End of the movie. Because then Jürgen Prochnow's plans just fall apart.
Yep, he's not chief judge. The end.
Okay, so basically Dredd leaves the Statue of Liberty. All the other judges forgive him.
One more thing. Did you notice that the Janus facility started exploding?
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Yes.
Why? Rico speeds up the clones.
Yeah.
He decides he needs clones now to fight off Dredd. And they wake up and just sort of start shambling around like Frankenstein's monsters.
By the way, they have no genitals.
Yeah, so how do you know which one's a male and...
But why don't they have genitals?
Because they're not finished.
Is that the last thing to grow?
Yeah, clearly.
Why aren't they partly grown?
And why are they all male? Because they're clearly all male at this point.
Okay.
Aren't you... Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't baseline human female? And it's the addition of the Y chromosome?
Yeah.
Incidentally, the clone makeup, these clones appear probably for less than a minute. But much less than a minute, actually. Probably less than 20 seconds. It took 5 hours to get them into that makeup, and 2 hours to take off.
Yeah.
Which involved submerging in a bath of solvent.
Wow.
They had to shave off all their body hair.
Oh my god.
And because they had to be there for makeup call 5 hours before 8 a.m., they got 4 hours sleep a night. The clone shoot was 10 days for 20 seconds of footage.
Wow. Yep, I believe it. So Dredd comes out and he's forgiven by the other judges, and he immediately puts his helmet on and gets on a...
I'm a street judge. They offer him the chairman of the council. Yeah. He says, I'm a street judge and I'm very late for work. Finally puts the helmet back on. Hershey gives him a kiss. Everyone hates this kiss. Sorry, you were saying?
I needed to rewind to a scene we forgot to mention. He had stolen that judge's uniform.
Yep. Isn't that a crime?
Okay, fine. He's committed lots of crimes, probably sneaking back into Mega City 1, etc. He gets on the Law Master.
Yep.
When they fly out, he's not in the uniform anymore. He's suddenly back in street clothes of some sort.
Whoops, I didn't notice that.
Annoying. It reminded me when you mentioned that he finally had the costume on, because even when he did put a costume on, it suddenly magically disappeared the next scene.
And then he puts it back on in this scene.
Yes.
Sort of, he's zipping, we see him zipping it up.
Yeah.
How did he get that on so quick?
Yep, and he's got blood on his face again, which again has been appearing and disappearing throughout this whole sequence. Hershey gives him a kiss. A lot of people have a big problem with this kiss because Dredd has no interest in women. They're like monks, as you said. Yeah.
But Hershey initiates the kiss, so I give it a pass. He just sort of passively accepts it. Mm-hmm. Fine. Then he drives off, and it seems like a very quick transition to him driving out into a dead end, sort of looking over the city. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, well, that's awkward. He's just going to have to turn around and go back through all those people who just applauded him as he left. Yes. It's the overlooking the city shot that we've seen in 100 superhero movies. Yep. I think like Superman flying over the Earth or Spider-Man at the end of that first Sam Raimi one. But at least they were going somewhere. Dredd's just sort of stuck on a platform with no exit.
And then we get credits. The thing I want to mention about the credits is the credits, the 2000 AD credits. I've never seen this in any other comic book movie we've done. Right at the very end of the credits, after the music credits and everything, we get a kind of table, like a chart, which lists every character, Judge Dredd, Judge Hershey, Rico, Mean Machine, Fargo, even the ABC Warrior, and then the writer and artist that created that specific character.
Amazing. I've never seen this. Is never
very specific.
Why did this happen? It must have been in the original in the original agreement.
Maybe, yeah.
It must have been.
Usually what happens in these movies is you see Judge Dredd created by John Wagner and Carlos Ezquerra, and then you'll have special thanks and it'll list 20 other people. At
most. Normally you just get what you mentioned the first time, just characters created by.
Yeah.
Or Judge Dredd created by.
Or based on characters appearing in 2000 AD.
They mention, as you mentioned, they have a chart. Character, writer, artist. Then the characters: Dredd, Hershey, Rico, Angel Gang, Chief Justice Fargo, ABC Warrior Hammerstein, and then they have the writer and the artist for each of those characters.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. Never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
Well spotted. I missed it.
Yeah. It's right at the end. Okay, I guess it's trivia time.
Indeed. All right, so the budget of this film was $85 to $90 million.
Whoa, okay.
Very exy.
That is interesting because watching this, I immediately felt like the vision of the future is it's in a lot of 90s movies. It's in Tank Girl. It's in Johnny Mnemonic.
Yep.
It's in Demolition Man.
Yep.
It kind of feels the same
Mystery
as
Man.
all those... Mystery Man. It feels like all those movies.
Batman. It's the Batman aesthetic, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's $80 million. It's like a lot.
Where did the money... Like, this film feels like they cut a lot of corners.
Yeah.
4, 5 sets.
Yeah.
We hardly ever see the city, and it's always computer generated.
Yeah.
1 outdoor shoot for less than a minute.
Yeah.
Where'd the money go? We know a lot of it went on Sylvester Stallone's salary.
Yeah.
At least 10% of it.
Yeah.
The rest, I don't know. How expensive was Max von Sydow in the mid-90s?
No, I don't think it would have been much.
No. Well, they certainly spent... Like, the Mega City 1 set costs a lot. Out at this Shepperton Studios, they built a big set.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, it doesn't feel like a lived-in world. We see so little of it.
Yes, that's part of the problem, I think.
Big part. Alright, $85 to $90 million budget, box office $113.5.
Okay.
So that's a flop.
Yeah.
You need to make 3 times your budget to be successful.
The advertising would have been another $60 million.
Yep. And so this, and of course it's a famous flop. Like, we know because of the press about the movie.
Yeah.
Critics didn't like this movie, and audiences didn't like this movie.
Yeah.
Alright, how did it get made? So, there was interest in making a Judge Dredd movie almost as soon as Judge Dredd came out. Mm-hmm. People read the comic, liked it. Someone signed the rights very early on. Then, a producer called Charles Lippincott, who did the marketing for Star Wars, the first Star Wars A New Hope, so some sort of wunderkind at this point in his life. And he also did the marketing for Alien, so he worked with Ridley Scott.
Okay.
He decided, he'd read the comic and he wanted the rights. He waited for whoever bought it originally, some young documentary filmmaker, and negotiated the rights in 1983. So very early on. Very early. Apparently expensively and lengthily. Took a year, presumably when they were nailing out these credits that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
These kinds of details, that whatever film was eventually made would have to have that level of detail in the credits. Yeah, they made him work for it. And yet he had the usual trouble getting his comic book movie film made all through the 80s. RoboCop came out. That apparently put a big dampener on it.
Yeah.
A lot of people were just like, well, we can't make this for a few years.
Right.
Because RoboCop feels like Judge Dredd.
Yeah, and I was actually thinking while we were talking, imagine if Paul Verhoeven had directed this. It would have had the right tone.
Oh, it would have been so cool.
But then I thought, no, he did it.
He did it already. RoboCop.
Yeah, he did it already.
Yeah, absolutely. As is, I suppose, typically directors come and go, screenwriters come and go. There were many script doctors, script writers on this. Something like 6 or 7 different people worked on script, including Peter Briggs, who we discussed in the Hellboy episode, because he wrote the script for Hellboy, and he was something of a wunderkind himself for having written the Alien vs. Predator spec script that never got made.
Okay.
But that was the kind of like the script that made his name. He wrote a draft that he was very passionate about, featuring, you won't be surprised to hear, Judge Death.
Oh, okay.
Spoilers, everyone who writes a Judge Dredd script wants Judge Death in it.
So Judge Death is kind of, he's like this Grim Reaper type character, but he's a judge, but he's from an alternate dimension where they decided that all crimes had been committed by the living.
Yeah.
So life itself must be a crime. So they killed everyone in that dimension, and only these spectral judges were left, and they crossed over into Judge Dredd.
It's Judge Death that Judge Dredd punches in the face.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. Punches right through his helmet.
Yeah.
It's great. He had an awful time on this. You know, he wrote his script, he kept revising it, he kept getting feedback from the producers, they kept changing things. Eventually, this guy, Lippincott, told him that he didn't want his script to get made and was working against him.
Okay.
And that there was another scriptwriter that had come in, it might have been Weathers, who was writing. Yeah. And at this point, Arnold Schwarzenegger was attached as playing Judge Dredd.
Okay.
So, you read the book that you gave me, The Making of Judge Dredd, very sort of implies Schwarzenegger expressed an interest.
Okay.
But it seems like he was seriously involved for a time. He apparently reached out to the film, or his people, reached out to the filmmaker saying, I want to be Judge Dredd. You can imagine?
Yeah. Well, he was attached. You know what? He was attached to Sergeant Rock for a long time. And that's like the most nonsensical... We're going to have Sergeant Rock with an Austrian accent? How does this work? Anyway, but also this is during the period when Schwarzenegger was pranking Stallone, right? Because he said, "Oh, I'm interested in Stopper, My Mom Will Shoot," in order to make Stallone go, "I want to do that one."
Right. Oh my God, that was effective.
To force him into making a flop because Stallone was so dumb, because they were competitive at this stage.
Hilarious. I never heard that before.
Yeah.
And I really, really want it to be true. Because if I'm Team Arnold, because Stallone is a full-on Trump supporter.
Right. Okay.
Oh, yeah. He recently said he was the second George Washington.
Wow. All right.
Anyway, no, but Arnold's involvement precedes Stallone's.
Right.
Anyway, Peter Briggs, the way Peter Briggs conceptualized it was that he was competing with this guy. They were both writing scripts. And then Schwarzenegger would get the two scripts and then decide which one he liked better. He had an awful experience. He ended up getting heart palpitations or something and then pulled out.
Okay.
He really got screwed. Anyway, then Tony Scott was attached as a director for a time.
Oh.
I don't know if Tony Scott is a Judge Dredd fan or not.
Huh.
But during this stage
He's British.
Yeah, during this stage when Briggs was the screenwriter, he was attached as the director, definitely. Okay. And they were meeting one another.
Okay.
In fact, Briggs tells an anecdote where he asked him, I think, he said to him, how come you don't make more science fiction films? And Scott apparently said, well, they always ask my brother.
Right.
Anyway, then Danny Cannon comes on. He had made one film at this point called Young Americans.
Okay.
But quite very young, only 27, I think.
Wow, okay.
And he's the one that came up with this idea, as I mentioned, that he was going to make Dredd kind of like a larger-than-life Roman epic. Kind of like Megalopolis.
Okay.
And equally as effective. Yet he seems to have run up against, and there's not a lot written about this online, but he seems to have run up against Stallone.
Huh, okay.
Stallone, whose cachet is very high at this point. This is before the doldrums of the late 90s, early 21st century.
Yeah, debatable, but okay.
He's made some shit movies, Stopper on My Mum Will Shoot, but he's still a very bankable action star.
Okay, yeah.
Apparently Stallone had a lot of input and a lot of clashing with Cannon. Like, apparently Stallone camped in the editing room.
Huh. Wow.
And what do?
Yeah.
Stallone has an Oscar at this point.
Yeah.
Do you throw him out? He's fucking with your movie.
Yeah.
He wants it to be PG-13, so it'll sell more tickets. How do you make a Judge Dredd film PG-13? They couldn't do it. It was still R.
Yeah.
You just end up with a thing with the tone is wrong.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
He pushed for things like, as I said, like the Judge Dredd's outfit. He had input on that. The story says that he was in favour of the helmet staying on.
Interesting.
But that faceless...
I don't believe that for a second.
But the faceless Hollywood types insisted it come off.
I believe that too. Okay, so I believe both these...
I think there's a consensus. I think that they both wanted it. No way Stallone wanted a fucking helmet on for the whole movie. He's no Carl Urban. He wanted it off. Yeah. He wanted the kiss, the aforementioned kiss.
Right.
Presumably so we don't think Judge Dredd is gay. He pushed for that.
Yeah.
And that's about all that's on the record, but who knows what else was going on.
Yeah.
And I think I have no trouble hypothesizing that the problems with this, the problem with the tone, the way that it occupies this unfortunate middle ground between camp and want to be Die Hard.
Yeah.
Is probably got to do with meddling from these producers and from Stallone. Speaking of meddling from producers, I was going to say this for adaptation, but I'll mention it now.
Okay.
One of the producers that came on in the late 80s was a guy called Cotty Chubb. I don't know anything about him, except that he's just some suit.
Okay.
Here's what he had to say about the helmet and about adapting a comic book character.
Oh boy.
The first thing was simply whether or not, to what extent we wanted, italics, to put the comic book character himself intact onto the screen. Because the character had a couple of major problems. He never took off his helmet for one thing. He literally never showed his face. Which of course means that if you're going to be true to the comic in this respect, you won't hire Arnold or Sly because, trust me, you're not going to pay the fee of a star like that and then never show his face.
That's what I thought when they announced Stallone was playing Dredd.
Yep. And this is a producer on the film.
Yeah.
He goes on, actually, about kind of the quote-unquote emotional dimensions that were added to the character.
Okay.
Now, there are Dredd aficionados who would say he would no longer be as much fun as a three-dimensional character. You want to keep him as an exaggerated force of nature dealing with problems in an over-the-top way, shooting a person for littering or whatever. It's only funny because of the exaggeration. But you can't ask the action audience in this country to go to a movie and laugh at itself for being insecure enough to want to see an action movie with larger-than-life heroes. So, what he's saying in that complicated double negative way is that it's too much to expect action movie audiences to not take themselves seriously. They want to just consume dumb shit, and they don't want to second-guess their interest in watching dumb shit. It is a shame, Kumar, that films are so expensive, because these are the kinds of people that are in charge of making art.
Yeah.
He was a producer on The Crow, incidentally, this guy.
Oh. I think I noticed some connections. One of the other producers. Yeah, okay.
Incidentally, Peter Briggs on the helmet. The producer's argument was, if we're going to be paying Arnold Schwarzenegger $6 million to play Judge Dredd, then we're going to be taking the helmet off. And I was like, yeah, but you're kind of missing the point. You're kind of missing the point of the material and of the movie. Quote, end quote.
Yep.
I'm with Briggs.
Okay. Is it votes time?
Yes.
Okay, these two ends of the comic, Cursed Earth and Democracy. What's your feeling? What's your relationship with Judge Dredd? When did you first get into it?
Probably about 10, 12 years ago.
Okay.
I think I'd sort of known about Judge Dredd peripherally, but I think I stumbled across it in the library, read the Judge Death arc.
Okay, yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe I went in expecting maybe Garth Ennis, although Garth Ennis did write for Judge Dredd. And yet in the Judge Death, I've used the word camp a couple of times. Judge Death does feel kind of camp. Like he's a leather-clad skeleton.
Yeah.
Wearing a helmet with wings on it.
Yeah.
He's eventually imprisoned in a miracle plastic substance called Boing.
Yes.
I'm reading this thinking, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Then I've just sort of read any Judge Dredd stuff I've come across, although I'd never read The Cursed Earth, despite it being on my radar all these years. I really dig it. Yeah.
I think these are such amazing comics. I love the goofy adventure stuff because it's got that RoboCop type satire in it, pre-RoboCop, about the future. I love the depressing democracy stuff where you really realize what's going on with this character.
I found that a hard read, I must admit. I guess I'm on Wicked Delight side of Wagner's binary.
Yeah.
But I can certainly appreciate it as art. Although I don't... The art itself that they used in those comics, it reminded me of one of the stories we read for Heavy Metal.
Oh,
the space adventure one.
Yes.
I didn't really like it.
Yes.
Which also didn't help with my... maybe if it was black and white, I would have dug it a bit more.
Yeah.
If it was just, like ink, pencils and ink.
Yeah.
But I certainly didn't regret reading it.
Okay, how about this movie? So I saw this when it came out. I believe I saw it in the cinema in 1995.
Brilliant.
One time. I didn't like it then. Liked it less this time.
Yeah. I came into this movie, as I said, wanting to hate it, or expecting to hate it. And then I watched the first 15 minutes and I thought, whoa, was I wrong?
Yeah.
No. I wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
Like, it's, the tone is wrong.
Yeah.
I find it hard to put it clearer than Van said, which is that the tone can't decide whether it wants to be camp or serious.
I agree. Yeah, 100%. Tone is wrong. Lots of plot holes.
Oh my god, the plot is a disaster.
Characters that are just all over the place. You don't know what they want.
We got cliche driven.
Yeah.
Buddy cop stuff.
Yes.
Hackneyed character.
Very generic.
Yeah.
A generic kind of action movie.
Yeah. A very kind of hackneyed arc for Dredd.
Yeah.
Guy that believes in thing.
Yes.
Has to decide if still believes in thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Characters that don't do anything.
Yeah.
Joan Chen. What's Rico's motivation? I don't know. What kind of music does Rico like? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's his character? I mean, Assante does a great job with what he's got.
Yeah.
He's...
Yeah.
He's just on 11.
Yeah.
I was happy when... There was stuff I liked.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
Anytime that robot was on screen, I was happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anytime Mean Machine Angel was on screen, I was happy.
Yeah. Good version of Mean Machine, yeah.
That first 15 minutes I loved. But no, there's much too much wrong with this film. It's a nay.
Yeah, okay. Adaptation, it's an easy nay for me. Really just missed what was good about Dredd. But I think they were maybe in an impossible position because of RoboCop. If RoboCop didn't exist, they might have an easier time making a satirical law maker movie, if you know what I mean. Or not law maker, law enforcer movie.
Yeah.
But also, as I mentioned, like even in the comic, there's an American sensibility about this movie, which isn't willing to say that the protagonist is the villain of the piece.
Absolutely. Completely. From the very first scenes where he...
Like that scene where he defends himself after the villain pulls the gun.
They didn't have the guts to have him execute him the way that Dredd would have done.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Where's the humour? There is no humour unless it's traditional American buddy cop film humour. Yeah. Where's the satire? There is no satire.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no I buy that for $1 in this movie.
Exactly. Yeah. There's nothing to compare with that. Nothing to compare with Meltdown or whatever that computer game is they're all playing. Yeah. That would fit perfectly into 2018.
Did we mention Idiocracy? Because that's another example that would be like, that's what we should be leaning towards.
Yes, completely. Yeah. Where's those Idiocracy elements? Yeah. Not present. It's all just... And yet we have goofy shit like a giant eagle building.
Yes. Yes.
And Stallone wearing an eagle on his arm... And a Coors machine that says like the food machine that says, eat recycled food, it's great for the environment, and okay for you.
Yeah.
And Abbott and Costello Avenue.
Yeah.
And a film that had made a half-assed effort to be PG-13. No Judge Dredd movie can be PG-13. Judge Dredd is famously over the top in terms of violence. Yeah. This is a crap adaptation. And I mean, we know why. Yeah. I read those quotes from from that guy, Chubb. Yeah. We know why. It's crap. Because of suits. Yeah. Alright, some trivia to end with.
Okay.
The director, Danny Cannon, he turned down Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Okay.
To make this film.
Right.
To make Judge Dredd.
Okay.
Which is great, because next week we're going to be doing Dredd Hard with a Vengeance.
Yes.
And my final note, I can't believe I forgot to mention it, we saw the return of Ming the Merciless this week.
Oh, that's right.
Max von Sydow in his second appearance on the podcast.
Yes. And kind of did a bit of a dive, and I don't think anybody else really, there were a lot of repeats.
I didn't find anyone, aside from the aforementioned comic book movie connections of Diane Lane.
Yeah.
I don't think that...
Scott Wilson or whatever his name is.
Despite being a kind of a star-studded cast, very little in the way of comic book movies.
Yeah.
But to return to Dredd Hard with a Vengeance, Kumar, what are we doing next week?
Okay, so next week we'll be doing Dredd. Hang on, before that I have to do our promos.
Oh, of course, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, please remember to like, rate, review, subscribe on your platform of choice. Please join us on Facebook or Instagram or Blue Sky. If you want to leave us a comment or send us a DM, all the links are in the show notes. You can also send us an email. That email address is also in the show notes. Please join our Patreon at patreon.com/comicbookmovieoblivion, all one word. We're going to need that money because we actually have to buy some physical books for some episodes that are coming up in a few weeks.
Oh.
But that's a few weeks down the line. Next week, we're going to be talking about Dredd from 2012, 2014.
2012.
This movie's 12 years old now?
Yeah, I can't believe that.
And we're going to read Blockmania and Apocalypse War, which are connected stories. Maybe my favorite arc of Judge Dredd stories.
Wow, even more so than Cursed Earth.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa! Yeah. Can't wait to read it.
I think they're really... It's kind of in the middle of Cursed Earth and Democracy in terms of here's what Dredd really is and here's some bonkers shit that you can't believe, the cliffhanger that comes at the end of every 6 pages. So read those. I haven't seen the Dredd movie from 2012.
Are you kidding?
Not kidding.
Oh, I can't wait.
I haven't seen
I
it.
cannot wait to discuss this movie with you.
All right. Okay, so we'll see you then.
See you then.